Welcome to episode 36 of It's Server Time. It is not going to involve Mix on the 36th episode. We are unfortunately without him because he just got off of a flight. He wasn't feeling very good. And he's just taking the day off. We can only get these out on certain days because basically I'm here at Proleague at Katowice, so I'm like busy a lot. And when we have the opportunity, we got to take it. So that's why we're still running it regardless. Hope you guys still find a way to enjoy it without the lovely Joshua Mix. Right before this, we were actually talking about though some of our favorite drinks. So we're gonna go around just to open things up here with Pronogo. What is your when you go to a bar? What do you start with? How are you carrying yourself? What do you get? What do you order?
I told you guys, man, I just straight shots. That's a straight shooter. I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time at bars, which you may have been able to figure out based on the fact that I would order straight shots, but that's usually what it is. No, I'll be with someone, and it's probably like a social queuing thing too, because they'll be like, I'm gonna order like one of these girly drinks or whatever. There's just a little bit of a starter, and then I'm just like whiskey, and then.
So it's an elitism thing.
No, it's not. It's just like
a masculinity thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was specifically implying I would actually go to a bar with a woman, actually, a femoid, perhaps. Yeah, and one of those.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah. So no, obviously. Great start. That's my preferred drink. That's my favorite. Okay, you know what? I will say briefly, when I said that jokingly, like 20 episodes ago, there was one YouTube comment that got me where he was like, "I can't believe you have a misogynistic individual on this show. Unbelievable!" And it's just. Did people have worse social queuing than I do? Is that possible? Like, what is wrong with these people? They can't get a joke.
YouTube comments are always great to read. Like, definitely. Always normal people.
Just real. It's real and legit feedback every single time.
From trusted individuals.
No, what's your bev? What's your bevy?
I would say an old fashioned is definitely like if it's like a decent bar, then definitely an old fashioned. I think like generally they can make it pretty well if they have a good selection between like rye, whiskey, bourbon.
Yeah,
I can usually like fuck with one if there's a half decent bar.
Yeah, I've tried a handful of old fashions. I feel like it's a little I'll just put it out there. I have been probably for like 4 years, I was a Negroni guy. So I was getting just gin, Campari, and vermouth. And I think that's like a really nice, just like complex flavor, but it's also kind of like I'm comfortable with it now. And then I actually like stripped it out even more now. So I've been getting martinis actually for the last year. Cause it's just like, I just now realize I don't love not knowing how much alcohol I'm drinking, aka like these crazy cocktails that just kind of get you drunker than you think you're gonna get. And now I just want to get hit in the face by it. Know it's like an intense drink so that I don't overdo it anymore. And it's actually helped me just like drink less because if I have 2 martinis, I felt myself getting a strong buzz because of the flavor also. Like it's not just going to sneak up on me. So
also when you're getting like a bunch of those cocktails, you're also mixing up like sugar intake as well. So you can also fuck with the way that you're getting like a little bit more buzz. It's harder to tell as well.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's super. Yeah. If you ever have any of those like strawberry vodkas, even they're getting pretty good at masking the alcohol, and it just feels like you're having a seltzer or something. And then before you know it, on the floor. So.
Yeah.
How do you usually have your martinis though?
I usually go dry. I actually think I have gone dry on them for a while. I think it's because dirty martinis are a little inconsistent for me, whereas like I do dry with just like a twist of lemon. So just like, lemon peel. And I feel like most places do a pretty good job at that. And then all you're really comparing there is like how good the gin is, how good the vermouth is, and what the ratio is based off of what the bartender does. And then like they can do a little more with the lemon, like sometimes they do a big twist or whatever, and then they like coat the glass and stuff like that. And just that's all I really need. Like I don't want it to be too dirty. Like, do you get them dirty or what?
No, I don't like dirty martinis at all. I usually don't like martinis, but the couple of times I've had them, they were pretty okay if they were dry. My brother made me one that was super dirty, and it was just like disgusting to me. I did not like it at all.
Yeah. All right. This isn't an alcohol podcast, but we just wanted to open things up with a little bit something different there. So we're going to be talking a lot about Pro League here because that's obviously like what's been going on for the last couple weeks. It's still going to be going on for three more weeks as of this recording. And yeah, so let's just start from the top on this one. So we had Group A that was played out. The winner of the group was Vitality as they 5-0'd their group. Have you guys been liking this new Vitality? Because they didn't qualify for Blast, but they looked pretty solid in their group. So yeah, thoughts?
I mean, I like them. I think even when we went away from Blast, we all thought that they looked pretty decent and just needed like a little bit more time to kind of click. But at this event, I think they kind of hit the form that I don't want to say it was expected of them, but it's kind of the kind of level we expected to see of them originally when we saw them go international. And people were like, "Oh, they have Dupree and Madis and ZywOo. Like, surely that they're going to play well." But this event, they actually kind of hit that, and it was pretty noticeable in the mid rounds, especially because you'd have situations unfold like it did with the previous roster with Masuda, but then it would be like a 3v3, and then Spinks would get like the one key kill to crack open like that specific situation. Like they'd walk into a bomb site on Mirage, and Spinks would just instantly entry the guy playing close, and then they would have the site, and it would just be like there's certain rounds you could definitely tell that he was making like the absolute difference between the previous roster versus this one. Like it seems like not necessarily like a small change, but like swapping a player isn't always going to give you like the exact kind of impact you're looking for. But for this team specifically, it did exactly what was needed because Spinks can just take that initiative and get those certain kills in the most important situations that matter. And that's what was opening up rounds for them here.
It's basically exactly what we all wanted to see when Spinks was announced and touted. Even before it was officially revealed, we were thinking, okay, Masuda obviously is not dead weight, but he's not nearly pulling his weight in terms of what they really need. And I think a lot of that was predicated on the fact that we all expected the Danish duo to do a lot better than they ended up doing and offer a lot more impact. So when they weren't actually being able to multi-frag on the CT side as well as they ought to have been, or when they were just a bit lackluster in their T-side moves, it felt to me like, okay, if these guys can take a back seat and take a more supportive role, then Spinks can do the heavier lifting that we thought the Danes would, and maybe that is going to just improve a lot of things. I think it was you, Mauisnake, who said before that, if we just shoot people like 25% more often or something, then a lot of your problems go away, even if there are, cohesion problems or like the language isn't setting in properly or what have you. But I also don't know. Like, it's one of those things where maybe if we had more background information on Vitality and we saw like maybe Masuda was struggling more with English or something, that would add more color to like whether or not slotting in a very comfortable English speaker in his place would help with their communication. And sometimes I do think you still see some issues with that anyway, where it's like obviously Spinks is adapting to a new system, the whole set of leadership, but for the most part, I think that this move has gone exactly the way that people wanted to. I'm still waiting to see if this is enough to propel them to like a steady top 3, but considering the weak field that they're going up against, aside from the FaZe and the NaVi, and also depending on how much weight you put on these EPL games, FaZe and NaVi might be there for the taking anyway, or they both sort of slapped a little bit in the last couple of times. Obviously, Endpoint defeating NaVi, which maybe we'll touch on, or maybe that's the only little words that they get. But either way, it's like, okay, well, maybe these teams are a little bit more mortal. Certainly in these games that don't matter as much because they're a group stage game as opposed to a playoff game. They're not the big stage environment. Vitality, making it through here is, I think, exactly what we wanted to see because the pressure isn't on yet. So just use this as like practice, but also really try to defeat some of these really good teams, right? So I'm glad that they were able to show up a little bit here. And even though I don't necessarily, watch every game as intently as possible, because it's not one of those big stage ones, it is still something that is nice to see Spinks firing sort of on all cylinders. He's really, I think, a very solid player. And so I'm glad to see that he's able to represent his new team against Tier 1 a lot more often. Obviously, Vitality is a partner team, so to speak, and ENCE wasn't, right? So that's another thing to think about, I guess.
I think ENCE is a partner team for Pro League, but not Blast. So basically, he has more time to shine, more time to prove that he is worthy of that sort of Tier 1 status, which I think he rightly has earned at this point. I don't think anybody's even really doubting him. He hasn't really popped off like incredibly at a super high levels at stadium moments, I would say. But at this point, it seems like it's a matter of time for that to happen. And right now, I would peg him as pretty easily a top 12 player of the year. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind at that number. I might even go further up. Like if I had to give him a ranking today, it probably is around like 7 to 9 actually.
Yes.
But I'd have to really break it down and think about who else occupies my top 10 to put that out there. But I would just say like eighth best of the year so far. And I think with Vitality, what's nice is that he's actually probably going to get a boost for the last few months here, because this team just feels like they're better than Ents were. So you're gonna see him more often competing at a higher level. And even though maybe you go deep in a tournament, you'll have one bad series because you're against the best team in the, like a NaVi or a FaZe in the late round or a late tournament situation. But just getting that far gives more, like, to even achieve that, we all actually, rightly so, value the placing of his team, and give him a little bit of slack that maybe in the last match he put up a 0.95 or something like that.
Yeah. It's like the Antwerp Major where he reaches semis. It's like you're supposed to lose at that point. Like you're not supposed to be able to make it all the way to the finals and challenge in that sense, because you're just new to the game in the sense, like new to the top level game. So that's definitely something where I think, I don't know, for me, I feel like, on the point about Ents being a partner for only one of the two leagues, I do think that is a more extreme example of this has been Cloud9 recently, where we feels like we haven't seen them play in so long. So the fact that Vitality is going to show Spinks off way more is going to be, I just think it's good for the game. It's good for the game to have like a new star, potential superstar talent where he could theoretically propel himself up to top 5. Maybe not this year, but next year. It's like definitely something to watch out for. And I'm really glad for him in that sense.
To that point, I really wish that Blast would just invite 4 non-partner teams, like the 4 highest ranked teams outside of theirs, just for the group stage even, because they already do it for the showdown. But if they did it for the group stage, it would add a little bit more flair to the event as a whole, I think. Like, I don't know. I'm sure they have like some obligations as to like whatever their agreement is with partner teams, but if they invited 4 teams, it would keep all of their partner teams in check, because if they're then being beaten by the 4, like if somehow out of the 6 spots that go to the fall showdown, 4 of the partner teams are beating them, then they're gonna already be checked for that. But you also are missing out on the chance to see teams like Ents, like Cloud9 playing and it's always like the first tournament after the break as well. So you're always missing out for like basically an entire month in seeing some of the best teams, because then it usually goes like Blast and then it goes EPL, and EPL already has groups, so you're not seeing a lot of these teams even now. Like we aren't seeing Cloud9, we aren't seeing Ents. We're only going to see them now, so it's just like, for me, that's a little rough, and I don't see why they would. I think it was even mentioned on the last Snake Inventor episode, or maybe the one with Freya, I don't remember, but it would also help change the format of the entire event if they had 16 teams. 12 is such a weird number. It's just like you really can't set up like a good format with 12 teams anyway.
Agreed.
But to quickly go back to Vitality, I think that Spinks has also helped unlock like a little bit more of Dupree. It seems like he's also playing a lot better than he was previously. So it's kind of like a knock-on change for me in the sense that it's not solely it's not just solely Spinks stepping into this team and fragging out. It's kind of unlocking the potential of the rest of the team like we expected to see before.
I mean, ZywOo just had a monster event at this one too. So yeah, I mean, I think everybody is actually playing better. I mean, maybe statistically, like one person is a little bit worse for some weird reason, but like this Pro League so far in terms of rating, statistically alone, it's the best that ZywOo has performed. If you just stop the event today, he hasn't played this well across like a 10+ map thing for a really effing long time. Like actually, I'm scrolling through right now. Since Blast Spring 2020 Europe Showdown, that's the last time he's had a rating like this. So it's been like 2 years in any tournament with 10 or more maps that he's had this kind of rating. So it's not like playoffs yet. So you can't. It's like maybe the competition's easier. But they beat NaVi. You know, they beat everybody. They beat everybody, and he was still fragging out in many of those games. So like. Think there's something to talk about there with his own form. But either way, I think that when I look at this Vitality team, I guess I'll put it like this. How close are they? So I would say like the elite S tier teams right now are NaVi and FaZe. How close do you guys think Vitality is? Like what more do they need to prove to us to get there?
I need to see them on a stage. I don't think like for me it's really hard to judge teams until they actually play in like a proper audience stage plan environment. Because I don't know, like you had at the last major, you had Copenhagen Flames play really well behind closed doors, and then you hit stage, and then they played a little bit different.
Yeah,
it's just like I think every team needs that kind of proving ground, and like you said before, Spinks has struggled like a little deeper into tournaments so far on ends, so it's hard to make a full judgment on them until they actually take to making playoffs and playing in front of a crowd right now.
I would agree 100%. It's like it's one of those things where you again, it depends on how heavily you weigh the group stage round robin format or what have you, right? It's like, are these really going to be the cases where you try the hardest? I mean, when it, there was that whole debate, I guess, over whether or not NaVi were trying super hard against NIP later on when NIP actually did defeat them. And that's because it seemed like it was a meaningless game at that point based on how all the point spread worked out and all that stuff. And, I know that Striker's favorite moment is when he's called to action to break down all the different scenarios and stuff. And credit to, I'm glad somebody's doing that because it is pretty confusing for the average person to just try, or even somebody like me who watches this stuff more intently. It's like, wait, what are the scenarios again? So I'm glad that there's a resource out there, but it is also one of those things where it's like, if you do figure it out and you are certain of certain things, it's like, okay, well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's hard to try super hard when you already know like the fate of the tournament or the fate of your placing. And, you still should, but that doesn't always happen, right? And so when you see games like this, it is hard to decide, okay, was this legit? Were they against opposition that were really trying as hard as they could? Are they against teams that have no chance to make out and are thus maybe a little bit emo, a little bit broken mentally? Are they against, a team that's already made it out so they don't care as much or stands a really good chance or what have you? So it's one of those things where you are not really 100% sure. And then even irrespective of that, like I said earlier, these aren't the highest pressure games. That's why when Note said that they really need to be on the stage, I 100% agree. It's one of those things where I feel like absolutely that's where true CS is for my money. And it might sound a little arbitrary to draw your line there, but it's like when the crowds are there and you can barely hear anything and it's like just such a whirlwind of emotions and feelings, and it's like the real creme de la creme really rises to the top at that point. You know what I mean? So that's what I want to see this Vitality squad at, and it'll be really exciting to see them. I mean, obviously their first seed out, so interested to see where that goes.
I'll actually take more a Vitality side in this one, that I don't necessarily need to see them succeed on a stage. I want to see that they can play this level of Counter-Strike throughout, because EPL playoffs are not with a crowd. And if they go deep in the EPL playoffs, let's say they get top 2 or top 4, I'm almost ready to give them the elite status, because the thing is that this is already not a team that I think is going to crumble on stages. You got like 3 guys that have won majors on the team already. You've got like ZywOo has shown that he can play very well at LAN. Spinks a little bit less so, but I think that right now with them, if they're able to consistently just come like top 4 at events that are more so in studio, I think that to me puts them in the upper echelon, such that if they go to the major and they make the playoffs, I would give them a very strong chance to upset a NaVi or a FaZe, just simply because I know that if they had done it in the playoffs of EPL, they're going to believe that they can do it on stage. That's not going to change anything for them too much so. So I kind of need to see a really strong run in the playoffs, I guess, of EPL, and then maybe I can give them that title, or that I would be able to classify them as elite, especially if they like let's say they win EPL. Like I don't think I need to see them on a stage, and I would call them elite right then and there. Like that would be good enough for me, but I'm not going to do it yet. Like it's still a little bit away.
Too early to jump the gun. Too early. But I will say it's kind of a more like meta idea, I guess, about team chemistry and their development. But you have to also remember when you're betting in a new player or when you're changing some aspect of your system, it's going to be a long time, or maybe not super long, but at least the time, there's an extension period where we're like, okay, how is this going to shape up and where is it going to go? I want to see this Vitality squad when they have time to properly anti-strat their opponents and are already figured out their game and are trying to figure out how to adapt their game to best fit their opponents. Because that's where it's going to be, that's where the rubber is going to meet the road for real. So if we can get that on stage, anti-strat time, without needing to worry about how are we implementing our game and whether or not it's the right way, that's when this Vitality squad can really be elite. And I think just based on the names, like the pedigree of their roster, so to speak, that's where I really want to see this roster shine. So like come back in a month or so, and then I think it'll be much easier to call whether or not it's going to be a successful experiment, but I think the odds are good for that, so looking forward to it.
Okay, let's move on to a team that definitely underperformed in this group. That I mean, they made playoffs, but kind of more because of a formality and how the round robin. Like basically, just they won more maps. They won more maps, so that's Navi. And I'm gonna open this up with the fact that this is the worst I've seen Bit play in a very long time, and
Yes.
I think this kind of shows. This is kind of like the first time in a very long time that Bit has looked kind of, I would just say bad. Like statistically, you look at the 0.99 rating for the groups and you don't think that's horrible, but his positions are so important on so many maps that when he does not perform, like he just kind of needs to, and you can see how the system sort of breaks for Navi when he is kind of just like a below average player, which he was at this one. Like basically, I'd say one of the main reasons they lost to Endpoint in that match is because Bit got 20 kills over 2 maps. He went like in total, he went 20 and 39. Like that's just so beneath Bit. Like to just basically bottom frag against Endpoint. Like what man, it's kind of inexcusable. But also, what I will say is that one thing I really dislike is that I kind of just it feels to me like Bit's not really that creative of a player. Like he doesn't innovate on his own game at all. Like I'm seeing him take in the game against NIP that they lost on Overpass. I guess it didn't really matter because I think it was map number. Well, let me see. Was it map number 3 already? So what? It was map number 3. I noticed Bit went to the same spot like 4 times in a row on CT side, and I was like, "What? What is this? Like, what am I watching? Like, you're getting hard cleared on after attempt number 2. Like, you don't. This is just like, are you like? I don't know if he just is only following a very strict set of rules that Blade has put him in that box. I've thrown out that theory before that I think Blade just kind of gives him very set instructions about what he needs to do in the beginning of every default, and he just follows it to a T, and then all he has to focus on is his aim beyond that. But I also think that maybe has like been covering up Bit for so long, such that if Navi or Blade doesn't come up with some new prep strategy for Bit in a game or a match where they didn't run it in practice, he's going to default to just doing really simple stuff all the time.
Yeah, just easier to figure it out, right?
It also makes me wonder if it's because Blade's more focused right now on kind of implementing both SDY and helping electronic call, that there's like less focus on like other individuals like the team right now.
Yeah, probably.
Like, if that's kind of one of his focuses, then maybe I don't know how much freedom Bit has in that system necessarily, but it could be that what you're saying, and that he kind of just has spots that he's told to go into and he plays from there. Or it could also be that Bit isn't taking the initiative on his own while the focus is elsewhere right now and he's not really being helped to make those decisions. It's kind of weird for me though, because Simple's previously said that Bit is like, he does take initiative. He said it in interviews before, and he kind of does like have the brain for the game. So for him not to be doing that right now makes me kind of wonder how that like reflects on him as an individual and whether it's necessarily like true or not. Because he said it about Perfecto, and Perfecto like does make his own decisions and he does adapt his own game.
Yeah, Perfecto is
pretty evident.
Yeah. Perfecto was one of the better. Evident. He was kind of one of the bright spots of most of their group stage. I think he had a very bad last series, so he didn't end up with like great stats. But in the first 4 series, I remember that he actually had a higher rating than Simple or something, like maybe first 3 or 4 series. He had the highest rating on Navi, and I think it's safe to say actually that if Blade is directing a lot of his attention towards those things you just mentioned with SDY and helping Electronic out, then Perfecto and Simple are kind of weirdly the guys that right now you're sort of counting on because they can think for themselves a little bit more. Because if this is Bit thinking for himself, then Bit's just not a great player overall. Like, but the thing is that we've seen so many times that on the best, like the biggest stages, that he's like probably their second most important player. So it's just devotion of resources for Navi.
Did you see that leaked, or not leaked, but like the time where there was a photograph of the strat sheet that got translated? A lot of it was very specific as to what the players should do in the openings of rounds and whatnot. So I'm wondering if, because it was so specific and Blade is trying to implement this system with electronic calling, I'm wondering if they're adapting so hard that they have fewer strats in that book, to the point where like some players are just playing the same spots 4 rounds in a row. Like, And the thing is that if you're a bit and you're playing the same spot 4 rounds in a row,
okay, it wasn't 4 rounds in a row. It was 4 times in the same half. But yeah, so I clear that up.
Okay, gotcha. But
he just played side like party or a playground or no party 4 times in a half, like the exact same spot.
That actually, I mean that actually adds to my point in the sense that they have less strats in the book right now.
Yeah.
If it was not 4 rounds in a row but 4 times in a half, that just tells me that they have less in their playbook overall at the moment. And for that, like, you get away with it when Bit is an absolute turret because he's just going to headshot like 2 people instantly and then fall away. But when that's not working for you and you only have those couple of strats in the book, then you get the Endpoint series, for example.
Yep.
Well, that's the point that everybody was saying is like, surely it can't continue. As soon as Bit falls off, then you need to find a different way to use him in terms of like, if he's not a turret, if he does need a little bit more of a jump on his opponents or to play maybe a spot that catches them off guard in that sense, then yeah, you're going to need to figure it out. And it's sort of like designing a competitive meta almost where it's like, this gun isn't working for what I want anymore, so I'm going to change like one thing about it. You can't just do that. You can't just change where Bit is in one spot. You need to work it in, like Blade has to work it into the rest of the set piece. Where do people play off of him now that he's in a slightly different position? What does that unlock for his opponents that his team is going to have to compensate for? It's very complicated and nuanced in that sense where maybe it seems like, just move Bit forehead, but it's like a little bit more involved in that. And that's where it comes down to me is like, I think Note's point is great where he's talking about this idea that obviously Blade is trying to help electronic IGL, and he's trying to integrate SDY, who I don't know about you guys, I'm still not 100% sold on him as a NaVi caliber player necessarily, but maybe that's a separate conversation. It's just when you do have that division of resources, it is one of those things where if all of your players, or at least some of your players, especially the newer ones like Bit, need a little bit more attention from the coach, from the planning and the tactician and stuff, in order to find that success, especially when they're maybe not as much on form as they were before, then you are going to see these necessary dips. It's like a two-faceted problem here, where it's like Bit's not firing on all cylinders like he used to be, and he's not getting the attention that he needs to be reactivated or to still find value for his team, despite the fact that he can't just headshot people instantaneously every time, which obviously was never really considered as like a sustainable idea. So yeah, I guess it's not really a surprise. The only question is, do they take this opportunity now that they've scraped into playoffs and error correct? And, I'm sure Blade is aware of this problem, especially if it's something you can just sort of glean by looking at the stats. So how many strats can they pull together, and how much can they reintegrate Bit into their new system with this downtime before the playoffs? That's my question. And I mean, you have to have some faith in Blade. You have to have some faith in the sort of support structure around NaVi to make sure that they find some value. But it is one of those things where it's almost like a ticking clock. Like there's the old idea, like when Astralis were number 1, they were competing against themselves to make sure that they always had like another thing in there, so that if they didn't innovate, people would catch up, and then they would be no longer number 1. It's like NaVi have to do that, but not to say that they're number 1 necessarily, but they have to do that just because people are starting to anti-strat them and figure out what makes them tick. And the more they sort of like, it's like plugging a bunch of holes on the ship. It's like, I left this one a while ago and now it's leaking everywhere. It's like, that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from this NaVi squad. And hopefully, I mean, I don't think they'll ever sink super low, but it's like if you're getting, smacked by Endpoint, maybe you've already started to sink a little bit. So
yeah, that's a good analogy, I would say. Just the ship with like holes that need to keep getting repaired with them. I think that the caliber of Bit is good enough that I felt like this is a bit of an anomaly for him, but I do think that it's not like he's gonna. In some ways, I almost don't think that Bit is necessarily supposed to regain the form that he had when he was like the easily second best player on the team. I think he's gonna be kind of more like bouncing around a little bit more between like 2 to 3 on the team. I think just from this group, I don't think Perfecto is always supposed to be like this good, but it's just like he kind of showed actually what he was capable of in terms of Perfecto individually patching some of the holes for the team in some of these matches. So I'm not like ringing the alarm bells for NaVi, because I also think that you're probably right that I think well, I guess we're all kind of right on this, that I think that they were probably focusing on a couple different things for this sort of group stage, and this was. Come playoff time, no one's gonna want to play NaVi. Like, it's not like this is them showing like so many signs of weakness. It was almost like just, like this kind of felt like Navi taking it like a regular season for like a professional sports team where they're just like whatever, this group stage, we're gonna make it through this group stage. Well, let's just try some things in the meantime, and then when come playoff time, we'll start ramping up again. Because I mean, Simple put it out there, like they want to deny this Grand Slam from FaZe as much as they can, and I think everybody probably does. So this is not like a tournament that they can take lightly if he really means anything behind those words. So. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. Let's keep going then on this group. There's a couple more teams that we could talk about. The first one I wanted to mention because I think they have the most news surrounding them is actually NIP. So I want us to like talk. We haven't really broken down this move yet on this show. So I want to get your guys' opinions on the whole AleksiB ordeal switching to English. Okay. So like all the parts of this are obviously that. NIP has removed plopski, who was doing a lot of anchor roles, kind of like, say, like support, mostly support-ish rifle roles. It seemed like he kind of had to just do whatever was asked of him, honestly. And then they got rid of him to bring in AleksiB, which means Hampus is now going to be more of a dedicated fragger. I think they even said that, like, someone mentioned that it was going to be like on the, like, more like a lurking type player, actually, for them. And then they're keeping Rez now on the op, because they use Rez for 2 series at Proleague, and apparently, if you guys read that Swedish interview about him, like the DJL said, like this guy's mechanics are some of the best in the world with Simple and ZywOo, which was like maybe a little bit.
Well, make sure you get the quote right because he said maybe Simple and ZywOo are as good as Rez. Like, come on, maybe? What do you mean? There's really any questions? So.
Yeah, that was a little bit too much for me, but I also think that there's something to be said there where I tweeted out. Actually, I want you guys to first selfishly address my tweet where I said that by the end of the year, Rez will be a better opper than Farlig, Cadian, and Device. Or like, I mean, he's going to outperform them. Outperform. So it's a little bit of a cheat bait, a little baity, like right there, because obviously like Device just probably won't play, which is why I can say that. That's like me saying like he's going to be a better opper than Kenny S and Device at the end of the year, by the end of the year in terms of output, and it's like no one can even debate that because they're not playing. So
you saved the clickbait one for the last one, of course.
That's a little bit of a bullshit premise. Okay.
But I'll say I do believe the Farlig and Cadian angle though. I believe that he's gonna.
No, you had me until you said Device.
Yeah. Well, let's just be honest. That's just an impression farm right there. Just like saying Device's name at the end is just like everybody's gonna be like, what the better than Device? What do you mean? Oh, it's like, oh wait, he's not playing. Yeah, that's really what it is actually. But okay, versus Farlig and Cadian, where do you think he stands, or he's gonna stand?
You can go for Noga.
The problem is I have to go off on the snip move in general, but I'll save that for after we're talking about Rez.
We'll talk about the greater move.
Yeah. So the Rez situation is interesting because like they were trying to say that he showed some promise during the CPL run, and we were like still trying to figure things out or whatever. And I mean, I don't know, like. DJL, I feel like, despite the fact that a lot of members of Talent have said that this guy clearly knows what he's doing, and his like transformation of NIP, especially their T-sides, is really powerful and stuff. I still feel like he's kind of underrated, where it's like people just forget he exists or something. And maybe that's just because not many people watch NIP anymore, but it's like, I do think that if he says something, even if it sounds hyperbolic or it is hyperbolic, like the whole Rez skill angle, it still is one of those things where it's like, okay, he's not just baseless, right? He's not just spouting off nonsense. Like, this guy knows a thing or two about Counter-Strike. And so I'll trust him in the sense that I think it's quite possible that they can configure a system where Rez can learn the op, learn enough about the op to be, obviously, a better fit for it than Esatag potentially, who was always just meant there as a not device replacement. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't meant to do that. So he was obviously meant to be a supportive rifler anyway. Like, he can go do his thing now, which is obviously a positive. I am a bit surprised that they didn't go for a different free agent op potentially, or somebody like try to buy somebody out or something. But if you're going to go the angle of like, let's work with what we have, then yeah, I can see why they would pick Rez. I do think, according to your tweet, he will probably outperform Farlig. He will probably outperform Cadian. That's because I feel like Cadian is not doing so hot lately.
No,
and I also think
he hasn't been.
I think Farlig is like, I don't know, man. He's an upgrade over Lucky, but I mean, put me in the chair and maybe I will be too. So I don't know.
Farlig is Proleague is just like under way too much mental pressure every single day because he's like on the biggest Danish team and everybody's talking about them, and he thinks that Device is gonna take his seat like in a week.
That's another mental thing about Proleague that I feel for. It's like Jesus, man. Like the whole time you're knock syndrome, but except it's coming potentially. Although we don't even know. There was that like weird news story where it's like Nippon talks with Device's preferred team, but they won't say who it is, obviously. So
they did in the article. They said the preferred team is Astralis.
Okay.
They did say it is Astralis. But they're also trying to resell him for the same amount they bought him at, which is like €1 million or something.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Good luck.
Really?
Yes.
Good luck. Dude, getting Astralis to pay anything. Astralis will sit... I'm waiting for the Astralis to sit down with their current CSGO team and say, guys... listen, if you guys don't accept a pay cut, then not only will Device not be here, but look around. The support staff around you won't be here. And then somebody's like, guys, didn't we already do this in LEC? Oh shit, yeah, we got to change the script. Let me come up with something different. Hold on. Like, I'm just waiting for that to happen, man. What a shit org, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, they just seem to care a lot about their bottom line right now, and that's why there's like these such crazy amounts of hesitation when you could get a guy that could change the entire makeup of like the entire outlook of your franchise. Dude, this Astralis, let's just have a little side tangent here. That's basically a missing piece for them, just having a Device-like figure. If they got, because Blame F is fragging every single game. Like it's almost like you can count on him on every map to have 22 kills. And then Config is a streaky guy, but he's like up and down here and there. But then the thing is, like, you just need some other output that you can count on, and that's what Device does perfectly well. So if they just had that, you would basically have two guys that you're going to expect to have 20 plus kills per game. And then you just kind of need either a system that sets up the other three in some way, or you need just one of the other three to do well. Because you can win a game with just three guys balling out. And you're basically going to have two guys balling out every single game if you get them. This is so, it's almost just so like it seems just so in their face. Like just sell some of your stock. It's like, just sell some shares, buy them back. No, anything.
This nip change to me, like, okay.
Yeah.
I think there's so many factors in this. It's kind of absurd to me. First of all, the fact that Device is even looking for a team and NIP aren't bringing him back is an indictment to NIP itself. Like, that tells me Device is like, no, fuck this team, I'm out. I want to go elsewhere. Like, I want to go back to a Danish team. Like, NIP are now literally switching one of the best Swedish riflers into an op because A, there's no good Swedish oppers that could replace that role right now. B, Device doesn't want to come back. Like, they're switching to English anyway. Device could easily speak English and play on that team still. That tells me Device is like, I don't want to come back to this lineup if he's trying to make a return. Like, they said in interviews before that they don't want to make a lineup change, but now they're essentially making both a lineup change and a rule change for one of their best players. So that already is like a mark on that whole situation for me. Secondly, I think, yes, Rez is probably a better operator than Esseteg. I don't think that's a really high bar to set. This poor I do feel bad for Esseteg. This poor guy's gotten like destroyed in the last year between the whole Cloud9 situation, the Complexity team, joining NIP to play with Device, and then Device leaving, and then suddenly being told, oh no, you're now our opper.
Yeah, don't forget the heroic angle where then like him not joining or not sticking with them like ruined the FPX deal and probably like indirectly led to the death of Flashpoint, by the way. And so it's just like, dude, this guy's whole tier 1 career has been a total disaster. I really
it's actually an absolute tragedy for this man.
He's like every move he should have just done everything opposite in his career. Actually, I think this is like I think Thorin made this reference recently, but it is like the Seinfeld thing with George. There's a day where George just says, you know what, my life has gone horribly wrong. I need to just do anything I think of. The first thing I think of, I'm just going to do the opposite of it, and that's what Esseteg should be doing.
It's so someone in the chat said Device fanboy moment for me. I feel like people, just because Device hasn't regularly been playing for a little while, actually forget how fucking good Device was. Like, it's really weird the way the narrative has shifted on him.
Yeah.
With people being like, oh, like, Device, it's such a strange way that people approach it. The guy was literally the most consistent top 5 player in the world. Like, he was never a simple, but he was also a player that you could consistently rely on any match, whether it be a arena match, whether it be a group stage match. He would deliver every single time. So like the thing is, yes, he's been out of action for a year, but like it's kind of two-sided to me. Yes, him coming back after being away for basically 6 months to a year, we don't really know how he's going to perform, sure. But it's also a player who's showcased unrivaled amounts of consistency for the majority of his career. And I think that it's really hard to go against that and gamble against him being that good of a player. Like, it's really weird to see the way the narrative shifted for him. And I get it. Like, I think the idea that NIP is asking for the same amount of money for him is absurd to me. Like, that part I don't get. Like, he's been out of action for a year. He's on a 2.5-year contract still, but asking for $1 million for him when he's not played for basically I don't remember when he actually got benched, but more or less a year, if I'm not mistaken. That's a little bit fucked. But I still think that Device is like the amount of power he brings to the team is unrivaled.
Yeah.
And also NIP could use him. Obviously, Astralis can use him. Heroic could use him. Make KD just the in-game leader. Like, there's so many teams that would benefit from him, and I think like, yes, it's really easy to be like, oh, but he's been away for this long. But he's also like, Device, I feel like as a player, when he sets his mind to something, he does like perform in it. I don't know what, like, obviously this specific NIP situation is a bit of an outlier with like whatever his personal circumstances were, with him breaking up with his girlfriend and whatnot, and whatever else went on for him in his personal life. But like, I think like he's very much showcased his ability to kind of overcome like most other players. Like, he does work hard to fit into systems.
Yeah. Well, I think we kind of do know a little bit of how good Device is going to be today, because like he's still playing. It's just Face It, but dude, he's top fragging every Face It game he plays at a super high elo. Like, his skills have not fallen off. Like,
his mechanics aren't in question.
No, yeah, like it's just kind of like, does he know the meta perfectly because he hasn't played it? But it's like, if there is anybody in the entire scene you look at and you're like, could he come back after a meta shift? It's obviously Device. You know, it's like this guy is just the most like cerebral opper as opposed to just being a high skill opper.
Because it's like people credit Astralis as if that's what made Device good, but that's not what it is. That's not how it works at all. Like, Device is a big part of the reason that team was so good. Like, if you don't have Device making every round a 5v4 for them, like every other round basically, they were very good at converting those 5v4s, but Device was the one getting those picks and making that impact more often than not for that team.
Right.
So anyway, to go off my rant back to NIP a bit, I think that whole situation with Rez is weird to me. I think that
let's jump to the AleksiB side of it. Let's jump to the AleksiB side.
I was actually going to tie it in. I was going to say it's weird to me in the sense that I think that Rez is a good rifler, but also I think the way AleksiB can actually form a system around that kind of player and be able to utilize Hampus probably better than Hampus utilized Hampus is like, I think to me that will probably bring about NIP needed more than one change to me, and I think that this is kind of like an in-between way to go about it in the scenario that obviously Device doesn't come back. So like, instead of making 2 changes, they essentially made a role change and a player change, and I think nobody would disagree with the fact that plopski was the one who had to go here. So
I would.
I think.
Who do you think? Who do you think should have gone?
Yeah, who do you think?
I really don't understand what the deal is with Hampus. I know he had some shining moments when he was trying to call around himself a few T-side strats, but Like before DGL came into the picture, dude, nobody had confidence in this guy, and so I don't get it. Like if you're not going to keep him for, maybe you're keeping him for mid rounding or something. But I feel like this plopski move is just yet another case of this perennial conversation we have, where it's like, does the support player matter, or should we just fucking remove him? Like after we put him into bitch roles, like you guys remember maybe the Fnatic Golden situation where they moved him to entry out of IGL, and we're like, oh, your stats suck, bye. Like that was not the plan to begin with. It's like this shit kind of happens all the time where there's some sort of scapegoat. Now, I think AleksiB is a great IGL. Everybody may remember from this show where I was opining about how G2 removed him too early and how like this Hooksy experiment is not going to work. I, of course, look a little bit silly right now, but just wait. Maybe this story has not been told yet. But I will say about this AleksiB move, I think it's great, and maybe he solves a lot of their problems. But why wouldn't you just swap out IGL for IGL? What value is Hampus going to continue adding versus keeping a supportive anchor bitch roll type player that plopski has turned into? Yeah, maybe he's not been used very well, but if you're going to change who's using him, then maybe that shifts entirely. I don't know, man. I think people are out on him too early, and I think it's also one of those cases where, to Note's point about recency bias regarding device, I feel like it's kind of similar. It's like people have just written this player off despite the many turbulent changes that have happened, and I mean, the whole time, this entire way through, it was Hampus we were thinking was at least partially responsible for this situation in terms of having a say, in terms of calling the shots. Maybe not in terms of the players. I think he himself was on the record saying, yeah, we just have to deal with whatever roster NIP management tells us to deal with or whatever. There's a little bit of backtalk there. But as far as like what's happening in the server, he's the one responsible for that. I don't necessarily lay the blame at plopski to the same degree.
I mean, I feel this is a bit revisionist though, because Hampus is still an excellent entry fragger. Like he can still easily fill that role for NIP, and he's also like, individually, he's still very skilled. So if he's focusing less on his own ability, or sorry, his calling for the team, then I think he'll actually be able to be utilized a lot better by AleksiB.
I'm kind of in between you both, where I would say that we just saw a problem with G2 where AleksiB had to switch a lot of his spots to be the bitch roles essentially while trying to call from those positions. And then we saw this clash between him and G2 based off of like how they thought things should be run. Basically him and XTAS, I suppose.
Yep.
If you want to go with what's been said on record.
Definitely not a bread-shaped man. Definitely not. He had nothing to do with it.
What is a bridge-shaped man?
Is that Nico?
Bread-shaped head, bread-shaped man, whatever.
Bread-shaped.
Is that Nico?
No, well, no, it's not Nico. He couldn't have been Nico. Dude, XTAS was not in any of the practices, or else he would have seen it was Nico, and he said as much. He said he did not see it at all. So yeah, it couldn't be Nico.
So okay, I'll do kind of what we did for the last show, where I kind of want an overall rating and like final thoughts about it. So what do you guys think though of this move for NIP, and how would you grade it? Before, obviously, we haven't seen any matches yet, so you just have to base off of your assumptions with it. Pronogo, I feel like your grade's going to be the lowest here. What are you giving it?
I'll say like I don't know, like I believe in the AleksiB move more than I disbelieve in the plopski remove. Yeah. So I'll still give it a somewhat positive. I don't know, like a B or something. Like it's not.
Oh, really?
It's one of those things.
I thought you were gonna give it.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it could be C plus, B minus, B, whatever. Like in that range, because for me, it's like it's very variant. It depends on the res thing, which I'm not positive or negative about. It's just like, okay, well, like unfortunately for this org, it really couldn't be worse. Like whatever changes you're gonna make, you're probably going to end up with at least a honeymoon period or something that shows a little bit more promise. Because like people forget again, my point about plopski being sort of like left in the doldrums, so to speak, in most people's minds with regards to the revision, like the recency bias thing, is like, to me, it's like that's true for all of these players. Like so many of these players, because the team's success has been not there at all. Many people have just written these people off as like, oh, Nip's just, trash from the roster to everything else, to like it's just all gone. Like nobody even cares about it. Crab music plays, and then it's like, what? I think you guys are overlooking a lot of the potential power on this roster. Like what Note said about Rez being really, really powerful. It is a bit of a risk because he's on op instead of rifle, but it's still one of those things where it's like, I mean, Rez, Brolin, like just read off the names. Like there's some legitimate people here.
There's a lot of name value on this team, honestly. Okay, Note, what are you going to give the move?
I'll give it a B plus. I mean, contrary to what Pronogo said before, is I think that like removing plopski, I think was still the right move over Hampus, because if they'd kept him and added AleksiB over Hampus, they would have had way too many supportive elements, I think. Because then you would have had Rez on the op and Esatag as a supportive element. Esatag's not taking over for Rez in his specific role. Like, I don't think that would have really made sense anyway. So I think in terms of the way that the roles will balance out, in terms of like how many fraggers and how many support elements they have, it'll work out a little bit better. And I also think the kind of system that AleksiB brings will be more beneficial to this team than it would be something like G2. Like G2 didn't need what Alexi had. Like that didn't work for those players in specific. So I think for me, this move, without seeing anything, I would give it a B+. But I still think that this team won't be like a consistent top 3 team. Like this won't help them beat Vitality
they're not going to be elite.
or FaZe.
Yeah, they won't.
They're not an elite team off of this.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. What I do when I imagine some of the roles and I think of who's going to play where and everything like that, I actually kind of like realize that this move makes more sense than I thought at first, because it was one of those things where I started working through like Mirage, for example, who's going to play where. Esatag is going to be B anchor. Brolin's been the A anchor for like his last like 3 years. And then you have Pat, which is going to be probably Hampus will take that over from Rez. AleksiB played connector back on OG, actually, so he's just going to go back there probably. And then Rez is going to be the window opper. And then I think about it, it's like everybody's actually playing a spot they want to play. Like, that's not actually bad at all when I really think about it. The main thing for me is, like, is Hampus's, like, individual antic kind of BS, but it's also kind of like a refined style for like versus art, that sort of like gimmicky, aggressive little shit that he would do. I think that actually can work pretty well, because him and Alexi and Brolin, like, it's just 3 different types of people that want to be active in the early round, and they just kind of will hopefully take turns on that. And then but I do think about, like, is this team clutch? And that's where I think weirdly, I think that's where this team is kind of weak, where I don't really know who's clutch on this team.
That's where that's like the spot Esatag has to fill, but I don't know if he can.
I don't think he's that good.
That's where it's a huge question mark, right?
Yeah, he's not no zip. He ain't Zipnix. He ain't classic vintage Zipnix. I'll say that. You know, like, he's okay.
I mean, Zipnix isn't classic vintage Zipnix right now.
Exactly.
So.
Unless he's playing against Blue Jays in the round 4 of the RMR qualifier, then he can do a 1v4 and keep them in the.
Did he actually do that then?
Yeah, that was the only time he's clutched in a while. He did a 1v4, otherwise Blue Jays would have gotten Astralis' number, and then they wouldn't be at this major, so...
Oh my god.
Earned a tiny little piece of his contract money there. Yeah.
That's the saddest thing I've ever... That's really sad to hear.
By the way, all the Esatag hate on this episode, we used to have a man who would balance this out. Unfortunately, he's sick right now, but just because he's not here, I'll say shout out Esatag. Mix said shout out Esatag. So.
Okay, sure. All right, so... Let's talk. Okay, so that's kind of rounds up the things I wanted to talk about Group A, but let's do like quick little stuff for some of the other teams here.
I was surprised you wanted to skip over Fnatic.
Like, yeah, no, I want to do something with Fnatic, but like I don't have too much. But like, okay, what do you guys want to say about Fnatic? Because I have some stuff. But what's been on your mind with this team? Do you guys like the new outlook of it, the calling style, or do you want me to just take it? Because I got like a 60-second spiel about this team.
I just wanted to give them the nod because they had a really good performance. I just don't know how long that'll last after this. Like, to me, a lot of the stuff they were doing was stuff that you get caught out by a team that you don't really have tape on. Like, the way they were playing, the ultra aggro style that they were playing in certain rounds, especially on overpass. Like,
even ancient.
Yeah, even ancient. Like, exactly. Yeah, the way they were re-aggressing areas. Like, I think the teams that start defaulting versus them a little bit more are gonna just shit on them over time. Like, if this is their style and this is what they rely on, it's not gonna work in the long run. But if that specifically, if they're tailoring this to teams as they go, then I see more potential in them. It's just the fact that I think as a overall team they have a lot of potential, but as a style as to what they're employing, I don't know if it'll work long term for them.
Yep, I would have to agree. We see this pattern play out many, many times just throughout CS's history. Is that there will be this sort of like new blood injection into it. Maybe a big org like Fnatic, but either way, it's like this team sort of hot prospects bursts onto the scene. They have some structure with them. They have some, sort of general understanding of how they want to play, and they have their own aggressive style. But because of the fact that they're so new, there's been no tape on them. There's no chance to anti-strat. The more established teams are there for the taking because this team can anti-strat them, right? And so that's what I kind of think about the Fnatic roster. It's impressive. I'm glad to see that this sort of, like, it felt very kind of scrap cobbled together in a sense where, there's some sort of past synergies, obviously, like Roy and Nico does and stuff. But it's like, for me, it's just, I look at this roster, I'm like, man, this is a lineup? Like, what's going on here? And it's just like a weird one to see, especially a weird one to see having so much success and even taking NaVi close, So that was one of those things that was pretty heartening to see, and obviously exciting. But I think flash in the pan is a good way to describe this roster, as far as like, I don't think their longevity is going to stick around.
Well, I said this. The statement that I had after watching literally one map of them at Pro League, and then I also saw some of their RMR games to prep for this event, was that I think this team actually is like kind of there's like re-aggression and stuff like that they do that feels a little gimmicky, but I'm glad that they have plans for a lot of stages of the round, and I also like that they can slow a round down a lot and sort of break it down. I don't think they're breaking down rounds at an elite level yet or anything like that, but I mean that's such a hard ask. But I think that the exact phrase I said is that I think within 2 months they were going to be a top 15 team. And when I said that, they were like 27th, and now they're already, after their group, they reach 18th. So I'm going to kind of stick to that. Like, I think this team is probably going to hit, like, unless they just have a horrible RMR, they're going to definitely hit top 15 for me. And they're probably just going to hover around there because you look at the players on this, and you actually have some pretty good talent. Like, can never really count Crims out. Mezzi's a developing IGL, and then obviously Nikodas and Roy are pretty good too. And Fasher, I think Fasher is kind of like a weird player for this team for me, but he actually played pretty well at Pro League, so I don't want to make any bad judgments on him just yet. It's just that I guess I was focusing on a lot of the other players a lot more at this. So I think this team is probably one that is gonna pass like, a Spirit in the rankings or something like that. I'm a little bit higher on this team than them. But when I even look at just every other team in the top 15, I don't think there's many that they should be too much better than, other than ones that are kind of there because of like Movistar is obviously like not really a top 10 team anymore. Like that they're going to fall.
Especially without Senpais.
Yeah, so that's like that's a team that they're going to pass up. They might pass up like a Maus or something like that, but they're not. I could see them moving up a few slots. That's about it.
I think top 15 is a pretty. I would almost say even not generous, but like too lenient. Like I'd say they'd stick between 10 and 15. Even I don't know if they'll make it quite to the top 5. Like that's a little too ambitious.
Not top.
But like past there, they'd probably hover between 5 and like I would even say like 5 and 12. They could hover between like pretty consistently.
Damn, 5 is really high for. I don't think they're gonna get 5. I don't think. I think
5. I think 5 would be like their peak, like absolute peak. Like they could hit that off of a streak of like very good results.
Jeez, that sounds like when I say they could be top 5.
I mean, everybody needs their occasional copium.
Okay, all right, that's yours. You're high on that.
I'm here to account for the missing mix because obviously he would big up Mezzi as like the best player in the world or something.
yeah, true.
But I think for me, this team's peak will live and die by how much they can get out of Nikodos. Because I think Roy pretty consistently performs. Mezzi is also like, yes, he's developing IGL, but his like performance isn't really that bad at all. And then obviously you have Crims who like plays quite well usually.
Yeah, he seems pretty consistent, I'd say.
So I think for me, their peak will depend on how much they can get out of Nikodos. Because right now he's kind of up and down. Like some matches he's playing really well, other matches he's negative, other matches he's like kind of okay. And like as their opera, he kind of needs to hit like a much higher level if they want to kind of make it past the level that they're at right now and consistently beat some good teams. So if they get more out of him, yes, I can see them peak around like, I don't think they'll quite make the top 5, but maybe they'll hit like number 6 at their peak. But like I that would have to have like a very good performance from Nikodos consistently to actually get there and stay around there. But yeah, somewhere between 6 and 15, I would say that's kind of like the range they'll hover around.
I think that's fair.
In other words, I don't see them ever making it a top 5 with this roster.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. The other, I don't really want to talk that much about the other teams in the group that much. I've said on Snake and Banter that I really hate the Spirit team. Like, I just hate watching them. I think they suck. I think they're boring. I think Patsy's fun to watch. If I just watch Patsy POVs, I think I'd have a good time. But if I watch the actual team, I'm kind of like, get me out of here. Endpoint, I like there's other than that fluky win versus Navi, they lost to everybody. So it's so hard to actually think this team is credible right now. But they're replacing Crucial, and I think that's actually they needed to do something. Personally, I would have removed Surreal before Crucial, but I think that I don't know why. Maybe they want to keep it like British, you know.
So, I think some of these players have like equity within the org or something. So
it's like a contract deal that basically when this is why it's really weird, honestly, to like talk about Endpoint, because Endpoint has kind of like a weird, and I guess we'll talk about like conflict of interest later, but I guess like what's kind of happening with the like competitive integrity of Endpoint is that they're actually like always gonna prop up their young gun player because they want to sell that player from their team. So like this is something that is so strange, and I feel like everybody's kind of like not really always diving deep into this, but kind of like the thing is like why would anybody really go after Endpoint? But it is a strange idea that that Crucial, Surreal, and Mighty Max all make money when a player on their team gets sold. So it's in their best interest, financially speaking, to actually just throw a shitload of flashes for Nerds every round and then just try to set him up for everything. And they're just doing that. They're just like helping these guys out like so tremendously. They're giving him boosts. They're making sure he always has the weapon on save rounds. They're always like, because they want his stats to be propped up. So when they sell him, everybody gets a big cut of it. Like that's just. So it's kind of like a weird way to play Counter-Strike, where at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure they're trying to win, but like a side goal for like a little side quest every game is make sure Nerds has 85 ADR. Like that's kind of that's just strange. That's just strange, and I think there maybe is like, if you look really closely at Endpoint, you might start to see that they're actually just trying to help Nerds and or Careby a little bit more than another team would, where they're trying to have a more balanced approach. So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't think like again, like you see, this is why it's like is that a conflict of interest, Pernogo? Is that a conflict of interest to you?
I mean, it's not always in their best interest to try to win every single match that they play, which is probably the biggest issue. If they are instead better respected or better rewarded for like this long game of propping up players so that they can be sold. But I don't know at the same time if that's like punishable necessarily, because the only people, I mean, I guess if you're aware of that, if that is actually what's happening, right? Because we don't really know how the players are treating it or whatever. But if Endpoint players are deliberately prioritizing stats for their potentially sold superstar player over their cash cow player over winning, then for betting, that's not good, because if you bet on Endpoint, then what the fuck, you know what I mean? Like, if you're betting on them to win and then they're not trying to win as much as they're trying to prop up their player, like if that is there, then yes, I think by definition it has to be some sort of conflict of interest there. But the question is also like, is that something that you can really safeguard against? I mean,
no, you can't. You can't.
Like, have there ever been cases where there's been like a reasonable? If we just think about this, theory crafting a method in order to protect the game against situations where you deliberately don't try to win as much as you try to do some other thing in the game for stats or whatever, I don't think you can really come up with a system that works there. Like, at least I can. I mean, obviously it's off the cuff, and this is a very advanced and potentially nuanced thing that might not even really be happening, because, and even if it was, you'd never be able to prove it unless the players admitted to it or whatever. So it's not something that we can really like think of super like concretely. But to me, it's like, oh, clearly they're saving too much. Well, how do you know that that's because they're trying to like, you know, pad stats for this guy? How do you know that's the case or whatever? And I guess the only solution to this would be if more teams cared more about individuals or team success than individual success when judging how a specific pickup might affect their roster. And as a result, Endpoint never really got to sell anybody unless they were also winning. And then their interests would be aligned. But CS usually is about winning more than it is about like your stats or whatever. Like, I think maybe there are cases in the tier 2 level or whatever where somebody's like, holy shit, look at this outlier. But I don't know. It depends on how heavily that's actually governed. You know what I mean? So how heavily is that a motivating factor for somebody to pick you up? And so
here, I want to throw this out there, and it's kind of like, I don't know how much I want to unpack or like dive deep into this Endpoint rabbit hole of like them getting paid to have players that they're going to sell or whatever. But think about the fact that they just dropped Crucial, who in the last few months has better stats than Surreal by a pretty significant margin, better than Mighty Max by a significant margin. But what kind of players do you think are very easy to sell in an open market? Oppers. You're not selling Crucial because he's a guy that actually gets money. I mean, like resources from the team are dedicated towards him to succeed. But what are they going to do? They're probably going to get this young like FPL Opper now, and then he's going to be also on the marketplace. So like, this is what I don't want to like dive in on Endpoint. Honestly, I don't think that this is like a malicious team.
No, it's just that their org is generally not there to succeed. That's not their bread and butter. They're not here for excellence. They're here for like a flip team or something.
They're like the Copenhagen Flames.
Exactly.
I mean, I also don't think their org's going and telling them like, "Oh, only make the Opera stats look good." Like that's not a thing. Come on, surely not.
But they make money by selling that. But the players make money by selling their other players. So like.
Yes, but I don't think that's not like the front loaded like effort for them. Like they're not going and being like, we're gonna make Mertz's stats look good regardless of how shit we do. It's just like,
is it gonna be Mertz? Are they getting Mertz?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea what they're getting. It's just like I'm just saying like they're not gonna be like, we're gonna make this player's stats look good based on like we can get more money out of him than we can get out of Crucial. Like,
they better not get Mertz and Nerds. Come on, dude.
Mertz and Nerds.
I meant no. I didn't mean to say Mertz. I have no idea what they're getting.
No, I know. I'm just saying, if they did, could you imagine?
It's just like there's no way that's how they're focusing their priority. Like,
you wouldn't hope so.
There's no way as a team. There's no way. I just don't think that's the thing. Like, there's no way the players on the team are like, this is what we're gonna do over like trying to improve our results as a team, and like
it's such a ridiculous
there's
angle.
No way.
It's such a ridiculous.
Dude, come on.
It's just unreasonable.
They all get together over past CT's side, and Mighty Max sits him down and says, "Oi, mate, you're gonna have great fucking stats right now. You're gonna have the best stats in the whole fucking universe, and then you're gonna get us a lot of money." That's what he's gonna say.
That's is he like? That I think that's exactly how Mighty Max actually approaches his IGL speeches prior to matches.
Dude, come on, just think of the stats. Think of the stats, And you sit there, the coach is all there, like, and if you bait him in this situation, this is how he's going to get the most multi-kills. It's just
let's talk about HLTV stats and how you actually get the most bang for your buck. Okay,
I decline to comment based on my Canadian gender rights.
Let's move on to Group B. We did a really thorough job on A there. So I really only want to talk about just a couple teams here. I'll just say up front, let's just get these guys out of the way. MIBR, FTW. I have nothing to say about FTW. This team was very, like, when I said Spirit was bad to watch, and FTW is literally like, you're just wasting everybody's time by being here. Like,
and that's not because you had Stododo in your fantasy team, right?
He was griefing it very hard, but I also think that this team was really painful to watch because Stododo sucked, and it's just like I thought Stododo was the reason Saul was decent. You know, like what's going on?
Agreed. Yeah, I would have said the same thing. I mean, you guys remember the heartbreaking James? Like everybody calls it like the pixel perfect clutch or whatever, but it's not really. It's just it wasn't actually. They could have done many things before that moment to qualify for the major. But if you guys remember that RMR,
that was the most memorable thing of the whole RMR.
Yeah, exactly. RMR, So that's exactly what I'm thinking too. And so of course, Stododo, a tortured hero. What is he going to do next? He's going to go 0-6, baby.
He's going to bot frag. Yeah, he's going to bot frag for a team that I don't know any of the other players on. So, yeah. I actually didn't know KST, to be frank. He was on the Fnatic Academy team. But, like, again, I'm not going to talk about this team. MIBR, let's just knock this one out really quick. MIBR, to me, just still so rough around the edges. I'd say that this team has actually upgraded in firepower. Like Henny can have some moments here and there, and BRNazan, like that guy is actually a pretty legit rifler, and he's a good hybrid. Like that guy can be something in a while. I would probably give him like 6 months, and I bet you that he's going to be probably their highest rated player, unless it's Henny. Like those two, I think, are going to go back and forth with it. And then
I agree, but I think MIBR's biggest mistake this whole year will be letting Woody go.
See, like that's what I was gonna get to. That Jota is just such an inferior IGL. Like their calling is so bad now. Like they cannot mid round to save their lives. They could be up 5v4, 5v3. I have no confidence that they're gonna make a good sound decision. It's just like he's still like. They're going to have to help him a lot. Like, Bit is going to have to, like, hold his hand through a lot of these games and be like, here's how you should have called, here's this, whatever. And they might have just straight up picked a guy that's just not cut out for IGLing, honestly. That just might be the fate of this team.
I think this team with Turtle, Henny, Bjornesen, Bit, Woody, and, like, any other player would actually have way better results than this current iteration of the roster does. Like, I don't know why they decided to get rid of Woody and make Cello IGL and then sell Cello. Like, it's such a weird, like, disaster of decisions for them. And it from end to end, it doesn't make sense to me because I think Woody would have been able to utilize players like Henny way better.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like...
Well, it's just the way that the cookie crumbled, right? Team, it's like
Cello, well, I mean, they chose to bench Woody and make Cello an IGL though.
Yes, but I don't think they foresaw Cello getting an Imperial offer. Is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they could have known that or if that was in the pipe. If that was going to be like
Cello could have developed to be a better IGL than Jota because Jota right now is so bad at it. But like Cello, you know, just because of his experience, I just give him the benefit of doubt that I think like he could have probably got it within a couple months, you know, while kind of fixing rolls up and things like just using his experience to make more solid decisions. Yeah. Okay. Let's just move on then. But that's enough on those two teams. So
can I just say, can we have like some sort of rule at some point in the future that if you name yourself something that looks like, I don't know, for example, Burzen, that you don't have to like invent new syllables for English speakers in order for them to say your name? Can we just like, can we maybe think about that in the future? Because every single time I was watching a Harry and Hugo cast, and I love those guys, but every single time they had to pause before saying his name so that they could make sure that they remembered exactly how to say his name. It was every time, man. I feel bad for them. I also had to check myself every time Hugo said the name because he like added an extra syllable or something. So it's like Brennazen or something, and he was like Brennazen, and I'm like, okay, all right, that's one more syllable than you need. But like, what are you supposed to do? It's impossible. Just call him Brazen and move on, dude. That's his name now, Brazen. I refuse.
So
I'm ZywOo and Brazen.
So we were told that at Blast Fall, when I was like first like covering MIBR with Bjornesen, they said that's how you say it, where you pronounce every first letter and you do it in the Portuguese style of pronunciation. So I think it's B, R, N-A, and then you just say Zan. And then we like really confirmed this with them. That's why I started saying it like that, and I think a few people picked it up. Like I think Anders started doing it, Moses started doing it, a few people, whatever. Then when he started playing an ESL event, Sponge was just like, I'm going to take the white man's approach here, and I'm just going to say his first name, and that's Breno. So he just started saying Breno.
That's legit.
That's kind of like, and like you could probably do that, but it's also like not reading his name. Like you're not going to say Dan for Apex every time. Dan is coming up the ramp. It's like, what are you talking about?
Well,
like,
the French have some nice names, though. If you could just say Mr. Madisclair or whatever, like Monsieur Madisclair. There you go.
That would be a little bit of flair to it, but maybe on like a clutch you do something like that.
Well, do you remember when it was like Fnatic against Liquid way back, and it was Twists against Twist? And they did the first name thing, and I just remember Twists going off, and Sadicus going Russell with the clutch, and it was like, all right, well, that worked.
I feel like Twist is like one of the few players whose names are just cool as fuck enough to like be able to play off it at any time. Like the Magnificent Van Delco. Kind of sick. Like
that is sick.
You can do a lot off of that.
He does have a sick ass name, like top to bottom, or
it's like when people are confused about JKS. Like, dude, your last name is Savage, bro. You could have been anything.
You could have been so many other things instead of JKS. Yeah, it's kind of boring name, but yeah, okay.
My point with Hugo, like instead of saying BRNSN, instead of saying BRNSN, he was like BRNSN, and I'm like, this is too much.
Very well could have been. I think Harry was actually saying it almost exactly how he's supposed to. Like, I'm not gonna.
No, that's why it was so weird because Harry was fine, but Hugo would add an extra syllable.
Just British things. Just British things. Okay,
Okay, onto your favorite team, Big, obviously.
Okay, sure. Let's just go on to them. Big right now is a team that just like they can be really competitive against good teams, but they also they've lost. I tweeted this out when I was watching like the final day of games, and I've when watching them throughout the group and stuff like that, like they really still have a ways to go because Tizian definitely gave them something in terms of mid-rounding, in terms of cohesion, where right now, the way I don't think I ever even described it like this on the desk, but the way I would equate this move from Big is that they finally took off the training wheels. Like when you're riding, obviously when you're learning to ride a bike, you obviously have them on. You're like slower, but you're never gonna fall. Like, but your speed is very much capped because you're not going to be able to take turns that sharp or anything like that. But now that the training wheels are off, I think they're kind of like falling a little bit. Like they're just not really like that comfortable riding the bike just yet. But I think that the peak of this team, this like the possible peak and ceiling of this team is higher than it was with Tizian. Like Keto is just a better fragger. Like I already saw many rounds where it's just like, okay, Keto just got like a 3K that Tizian never, ever would have done. Like Tizian was good for like weirdly the one map per 12 where he would just have 26 kills. But like Keto can basically range from like right now, unfortunately, kind of like 14 kills to like 24 kills. Like, and you don't really know what you're getting yet because he hasn't found that consistency. And they switched Crimbo spots a lot. Like they switched up almost all of Crimbo spots. And for some reason they did this like weird swap between like Favin, Crimbo, and Favin, Crimbo, and Keto, where all three of them are kind of like not in the same spots they were all in before, and they kind of like are mixing and matching stuff because you can't move syrsoN, he's the opper, and tabseN just gets all of his spots because like he's actually just the best player on the team, so he should get his spots. And then the other three are kind of figuring out stuff, and you can tell in defaults that they're sometimes just bad, like they don't know what they should do yet. And then also when I watch them play sometimes like a 4v3 advantage, there's just one hole on the map, and it's like, okay, you guys just didn't know that was there for your opponents, and that stuff is really frustrating because with Tizian, they would have known, actually. But Tizian won't get a kill, but he'll make sure that the hole is plugged.
syrsoNline, homie.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's talk about that.
I mean, just look at it. His only positive performances were against FTW and MIBR, who we just talked about as the losers of the group, who were bottom of the table. So he went like 0.8 against outsiders, I think, and like obviously this is just stats, but when it's your opper, when it's at the tier 1 or against these tier 1.5 teams or whatever, like whatever outsiders is right now, which I think was a pleasant surprise for the group. Not for Big, of course, not for Big, but the fact that he was still not able to. I made this point about Heroic the other episode where I was talking about how I felt like maybe they haven't really escaped it's not necessarily the onliner status, but it's like the maybe not proven at LAN, not proven at the highest echelon. Big are like a step behind them where they're in studio. There's less pressure theoretically, and at least for syrsoN specifically, he hasn't been able to really channel that, I feel like. I don't know what's missing with him. It just feels like he doesn't. Like, he goes to the same spots for the most part. Maybe he's a little bit more passive or whatever, but he goes to the same spots, and he just doesn't hit the shots. I don't know. Like, that's been my observation, which seems really simple.
That's not really that far off from what I've looked at, too.
So
it almost feels like syrsoN is just like he just absorbs whatever the growing pain is of the team to the nth degree, where it's like, these things between Crimbo, Keto, and Favin, like these are where the problems should be on the team. But for some reason, syrsoN's performance dips too, and it's like, why? Why are you worse now? Like you shouldn't be any worse. But I posted the stats on Twitter too. Like his stats, I think online for this year have been like 1.22, and his LAN stats have been 1.09. So he's not like a bot on LAN or anything like that. It's just that you're a completely different team. It's more like he's a completely different player online versus LAN. So it's just. You're just kind of capped if that's what your opera is going to be, because like I think most of us would rate syrsoN better than like Hades, for example, or like I want to say who would you put it? Would you put Hades
really?
Actually?
I would say Hades is on par at the very least. I mean, again, we're talking about LAN stats.
No, I can't do. Way. No, syrsoN's way better.
I don't know about that, man. I think on the big games they're about the same.
Big games.
No, I thought Hades is like a pretty good bar. Like he's better than Hades, but not like he's not substantially worse than Hades either. Like
I'd say like
that's probably
Hades
the
on
best
land.
kind of player to compare him to.
Hey, Hades on land is like a 6 out of 10, and syrsoNline is just a 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
It's just a little. He's just a notch above, but like he's still not like.
He didn't look
online.
like it in this event at the very least.
He's not even he's not a Dexter. He's not a simple. Like, obviously not a simple. But like, it's like.
Well, it's like
syrsoNline.
syrsoNline is almost simple. Like, no joke, he's legit like that good. He's insane. He's insane online, but on land, he's just like
he's almost S-Attack.
No, he's better than he's better than S-Attack.
I know. I had to get that one in there.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think you differ from us, Pronogo, but like, hopefully not by like too much.
No. Like I said, I think if you're gonna say 6 out of 10 versus 7 out of 10, I'm just saying they're both 6.5 or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really that different. Sure. You just split the difference.
Okay.
There.
Yeah. Okay.
I just wasn't super impressed by Big during this group stage. Yep. Like, it wasn't mega disappointing, but like the fact that they couldn't even take a map off of like the big 3 teams in the group was like, okay, all right, this is way less than what I expected of you. I expected that at least a map win between playing FaZe, G2, and
Outsiders.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I expected at least one map win between those 3 series, but they didn't even get one. Like, I think they had overtime versus FaZe, if I'm not mistaken.
No, against G2 in against G2 on 2 maps, they went to overtime.
Actually. Yeah, exactly. But I expected at least like one map win between those 3 series.
Well, they were up like 15-9 against G2 also.
I know.
So like they should have just won. Yeah, they should have. Yeah, that was that was probably the most disappointing map loss for them.
Yes.
15-8 actually. Just checked. Yeah.
Yeah, so to me their performance here was just a disappointment compared to like I would have always expected them to beat FTW and MIBR.
Yeah.
But to not even have like a half, like, sure they took G2 to overtime, but I would still consider that not a half decent performance from a team with like their caliber.
This was disappointing for Big, and that's why like I actually went on Alan Caught in the Crossfire with Alan Hender and Darth Mike, and I talked about this briefly, like where we thought Big's ceiling was for this season. So let's talk about like till the end of the year. What ranking do you think Big's going to hit? And this is where people might be surprised with my answer because it's kind of low. But what have you guys got for Big?
Wait, like their peak?
Yeah, their peak ranking on HLTV by December 31st.
Well, that's weird. You mean by peak? You mean the highest they've been all year, or do you mean
they are? They've already been 7th like a month ago or whatever. But like, what do you think from this point forward? So right now, for example, they're 13th in the world. What do you think the best number they will hit will be by the end of the year?
Oh, I see. I'll say 10th.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd say like 10th. Honestly, between the number of teams they have above them right now, I actually think like they might not even move from where they are right now. Yeah. So I would even say like 12th.
They're
That's
like
the highest they can be.
They're 13th now.
I know.
Dude, what? Yeah. You don't think they can win like a game?
Just saying.
Oh wow, that's really really low. I mean, yeah, I was gonna basically say 10th also though. Like I don't think there's a lot in the calendar for them to do very well at. Like they basically. To be fair,
there is Maus and Movie Star ahead of them, so actually maybe I will say 10th. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
They will move past those 2 teams at least.
Okay, if I'm like being as optimistic as I can be, like 8. Like 8 is the best, and it's basically they have to have a baller RMR. They have to ball out at that one.
I'm so glad I brought out the copium by moving my prediction.
But I really think it's more like, if I'm being truly honest, I look at the calendar and I think like, what are they going to play? RMR. They might get to the challenger stage. I don't think right now that they're getting out of the challenger stage. I think they're like they're way too rocky. And like unless syrsoN just ascends, which is just like something we've talked about now for a year, so it just doesn't seem like it's happening. So it's like, it has to almost be like Keto or Crimbo need to ascend, you know, like so Favin actually I think had a pretty good pro league, right? Like he was doing pretty well. So maybe Favin and Tabson are like their 2 consistent riflers, and then Crimbo catches up to speed because Crimbo's learning his spot, so he's going to play better at the RMR than he did at Pro League. I'll say that for sure. But it's just tough to see them really breaking deep into the top 10. I'm like I liked my prediction before because I knew the strength of teams, but like at think the top is very strong right now. I think the top 5 teams in the world are very good, and I think they are they're probably 2 levels ahead of Big, if I'm being honest. So, yeah, let's talk about some of the favorites in this group. Let's talk about let's do G2. Let's do G2 first. They went flawless. They actually didn't even drop a map. I'm a HooXi believer. I'm a big HooXi believer now. I think this team is like, this team to me, I want to see them go deep, but I'm wanting to stamp that elite label on them faster than I did with Vitality. Like, this team is freaking sick, and they have 3 stars. They have 3 insanely good players. Whereas Vitality, I only look at them and I see 2. I see ZywOo and Spinks. With G2, I see Hunter, Nico, and m0NESY. I think those are like insanely strong trio. And I think that right now, in my mental rankings, I put them ahead of Vitality by a slot.
Yes, I agree with that.
I'm surprised you guys are so quick to jump on G2 here. I know they went 5-0, but...
So I'll explain the reasoning. It's that when I originally saw this team play, I think I was very disappointed in HooXi's individual output, and I thought that like this team couldn't really perform without him stepping up. But to his credit, he's played a lot better in EPL than he did during Blast. Like, I mean, that's a very low bar to set too, but I like...
he could have done anything here, and he would have been better.
Literally could have done anything and played better. But to his credit, he actually like wasn't awful during EPL. Like, he wasn't even like the lowest rated player in some of these matches. So I think in general he did play a lot better in these games. But for me, the crucial factor is that he's getting way more out of m0NESY. I even tweeted it. Is that yes, m0NESY's had a lot more experience now, but you can't really deny the fact that HooXi is definitely having, like, his system is having impact on how well m0NESY is able to play. And Nico even mentioned in a post-game interview where he said something along the lines of HooXi's system is essentially like he's letting people make the decisions on their own when it's important. So like he's giving, it's not just m0NESY he's giving the freedom to, it's obviously like Nico, Hunter, JKS, like they have very experienced players on their roster. And being able to have the freedom for players like Nico and Hunter and JKS to make those mid-round decisions and kind of take situations into their own hands, that's very clearly benefiting this team already. And like, to their credit, yes, obviously m0NESY's individual results and showing have gotten a lot better, but also Nico and Hunter have very consistently been performing. Especially Nico has had like quite the rebound with this team in terms of his own individual performance so far. And I think like, for me, that's HooXi. Obviously, he can't go like 2-19 in games, but if he's getting like 12 to 15 frags, like that's relatively okay. If you have Hunter, Nico, m0NESY, and then like JKS, like all contributing on their own, like he doesn't have to be a massive fragger, but he can't be getting 2 kills like he was at Blast. So the fact that he stepped it up a little bit is enough for me to be like, okay, this team actually does have what it takes. He can't be dead weight, and he hasn't been, at least at EPL.
Right.
My question for G2 in general, or about G2, is how much better can they get than what they've already shown us? Because again, I don't really put a huge amount of stock in like group stage games and stuff. Obviously, they should have qualified, and they did so flawlessly. And to that extent, they beat everybody that was put up against them, right? And it was very impressive. But I will say, like, I don't know. I'm a kind of 2 minds of this. Obviously, I was very much against the HooXi move entirely, and I didn't think that it was going to work out at all. And so far, I've been the one who's looked silly as opposed to G2 and the whole organization and stuff. So it's interesting to see that. I saw a comment in the Twitch chat earlier about how HooXi's sort of like running it like the old Fnatic roster, where he's just a loose caller and he's not really caring too much about frags. And in that sense, I don't want the same thing that happened with Pronax to a lot of people to happen to HooXi. If it is actually true that HooXi's doing loose calling and it is basically Nico go kill, m0NESY go kill, etc., like it can't just be that. He must be bringing something else to the table to activate these players. So hopefully there's not too much credit that just goes missing, because now there's this narrative building that because he's bringing a loose structure, a looser style, less micromanagement, less calling than AleksiB, it's so much better as a system and it works really well for them. Because that is basically saying, like, well, then the superstars are the ones calling the shots to some degree of like knowing when to go and making their own individual decisions. Where do you even put the responsibility on the IGL in that sense? I don't want people to like not give him sufficient credit basically for what he's going to be able to accomplish. But I also don't really know if something like that is any different ultimately in terms of how you would anti-strat it. Like you're relying on we talk about Bit and how maybe he's not super creative, or he's not allowed to be super creative with Blade making all the strategies very specific. Maybe there's the same sort of shades of that going on here, where it's like if the superstars themselves are the ones who are making the decisions, who are changing up where their spots are, or figuring out when to go aggressive, maybe you can anti-strat that. Maybe you can get in their heads specifically, and maybe it stops becoming possible for there to be a Kerrigan-like reversal partway through the match where your stars have been figured out and read, and now you have nothing to fall back on. Like, I don't know how much HooXi will be able to do that. And so that's my next question is like, is this their ceiling? Are they near their ceiling at all right now? And if so, would this be actually enough to significantly and consistently defeat the top teams? Or do we need to see way more from them in terms of them being an elite level roster? And that's sort of where I'm at right now. I'm still very interested to see how this story unfolds.
I think there will be more answers once the playoffs of Pro League commence, because we could touch in on FaZe a little bit here too, but I think FaZe kind of were going into this group stage with pretty low preparation and just kind of like coasting and thinking that they were just going to make it. And I will say that G2 were playing the best CS I've seen G2 play this entire year. Pretty easily too. Like, they were playing incredibly well off of each other. Their openings were good. They were clutch. Like, every mid round felt like they were just ironing out every little like way to get space in the perfect way possible. It was incredibly satisfying to watch. Like, especially when they beat FaZe, I was like, wow, they just pulled off some insane retake. They like making sure that everything looked so squeaky clean. I was loving every G2 game that I was watching in this group. But I will say, like, that's with the contrast here is you kind of look at these two groups right now and you saw that Vitality had a lot to prove. G2 had a lot to prove. They both 5-0'd their groups. They like came in super hot in them, and they like for good reason. But then you saw NaVi and FaZe both underperform, or like do a little bit worse than you would have thought. Like FaZe lost a map to MIBR. They lost the series to G2, and they were never like really in it either. There were some times when the scoreline was close in the beginning of maps, but like G2 generally ran away with those maps pretty considerably. So like I don't really think like either NaVi or FaZe were like at the level that we can expect for them in playoffs, when they know they need to ramp up for that event, and then subsequently the RMR. That's when everybody's going to be like, we need to all peak now.
Yeah. Well, NaVi and FaZe didn't look like the S tier teams that we've seen them, which is the main point.
No, they definitely didn't.
And then in that sense, it's like, if G2 is defeating them now, okay, that's a good sign, good start, but they need to go more. You know, they need to do it one step further.
To that point, though, like for me, the way I am looking at G2 is that I have to see them again, like we were talking about with Vitality, but even to a larger degree with this team at least. We've already seen HooXi struggle a little bit with the pressure in the early matches. I think it wasn't just his individual form. Like, I think stepping into this team, playing with Nico, playing with Hunter, playing on a team like G2, like, yes, there is definitely a lot of shaky showing from HooXi in those first matches. I think when we hit like a stage and we're gonna get into an audience format, we don't really know how HooXi is gonna fare when there's a whole crowd yelling and he's trying to lead this team to success. And I think that will affect this team a little bit more than it will affect a team like Vitality, for example.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's gonna be one of the main tests for me to see how it performs. Just to touch a little bit on what I was saying with Nico's interview before, is that the impression I got from listening to that was that HooXi does call like very specific things, but he will give the freedom to like adapt mid-round to players. So like if he's calling that they're execing A on Mirage or something, but Nico has a really good timing on something on B, like he'll give him the space to work that out, and he's willing to like change up the entire call based on that. Whereas like maybe AleksiB committed more beforehand. He was like, even if you got that kill, we're still going into A or whatever. Like I don't obviously don't know the details, but like it just seems like HooXi has a better handle on the way this team should operate than AleksiB did. But whether that lasts into stage environments or not is kind of like the main test for me right now, based on how HooXi first played in their initial matches.
Yeah, I think they can eliminate a lot of the variance that might come from that if it indeed the path forward is basically HooXi coming out with something out of spawn and then them adapting partway through. Because if HooXi has everything written down in front of him and he can just pick something, and hopefully he's picking the right thing and the pressure isn't getting to him in that situation. But if he can call it out of spawn before the pressure has a chance to really start getting to him in the middle of it, and then the stars who are more grizzled, who understand the stage better, obviously we're thinking of like Nico and Hunter, and to a lesser extent Mauisnake as well, who isn't really super experienced, but hasn't really shown the fact that he's not super experienced on stage. Like he seems somehow to just be just like Bit in that respect, at least maybe to a lesser extent, but like he still delivers. If that's the case, then the mid-rounders can just come in and take over for him, almost like pulling that little bit of weight. But again, I don't want to get too ahead of myself because we have to see how he does actually adapt. And it's obviously a fair point that he hasn't really done much at the highest level. That's one of the main reasons I was skeptical to begin with. And the idea of him instantly slotting in and not having any pressure at the highest level seems a bit far-fetched. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see him at the stage.
I don't know if I would restrict him to like calling stuff out of spawn. To me, he kind of seems like a fledgling Kerrigan right now, like a far less experienced Kerrigan who has the ability to kind of like have a very good read on the game in mid rounds, but not necessarily one who can frag as well as Kerrigan, or one who has like the tenacity or experience that Kerrigan has right now.
Okay.
Well, like, PETA, when he came on Snake and Banter, did say that HooXi's like the best IGL he has ever worked with. So I imagine that has more. I imagine he has a very deep way of how he wants to play the game that goes well beyond just like the call out a spawn or just default or anything like that. And when I look back at like a lot of the games that even HooXi's called for G2 or back at Copenhagen Flames, like there's a lot that goes on in these rounds, and then they frequently just put it together in a way that it's really nice. Like they're able to put people together. Like if it's a lurking kind of thing, like they make sure that the lurker has impact. If it's like a kind of like a set piece, well, that's just going to be good. But I think he's got even more to give as an in-game leader, actually. But I just think that the thing is that the competition is going to level up a little bit more when it comes to higher stake games, because other people were chilling and G2 was giving it their all. So I think that's kind of like, can they look this good when the other team is like playing their A game instead of their B game?
Yep.
Which is what FaZe did in this one. So I don't know. Do you guys have much to say about FaZe? I feel like, I think I kind of already prefaced that I felt like they were kind of just sleepwalking through this group, and then they still did so well that they were able to get out.
Yeah, they looked a little bit better than NaVi looked, right? Yeah, so yeah, I would say it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Then I don't know. We could do outsiders. Just super brief. I don't have too much to say about this team, but I think my point has been for the last week across the broadcast and Snake and Banner also is just that I think James is like again showing that he can put a team together and make them incredibly competitive, because this team will probably once again just hit like top 10 status. Like they're just that good. Like it doesn't feel like to me that there's any reason that they shouldn't.
Yep.
Especially with Flip playing as well as he has. James is like still a very, very good player. I would still push back against his top 10 rating in HLTV last year, but I think he's like still a top 20 player. Actually, I think he's probably one of the best like 8 oppers in the world. So that probably puts you in the top 20 comfortably. So, I think this team is really good, and I think Fame and Norbert are starting to get it, whereas when I first watched them at... What event did I watch them at? Like DreamHack Valencia.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, they were a little rougher around the edges. They lost to Movistar Riders, to be fair, in the grand finals, which is like to get to the grand finals and then lose to a team that ends up going top 4 at Cologne is not... Or was it top 4 or top 6? Playoffs of Cologne.
They were in the semis because they defeated Liquid in the round of 8.
Oh yeah, and they lost to FaZe, right?
Yeah.
They lost to So I mean, that wasn't like a bad loss by any means. But then at this group also, they're taking care of business, 2-0ing big, and being competitive in the taking a map off phase, taking G2 to overtime. So yeah, they're good. They're good.
I think I'd agree with you in the sense that they're roughly a top 10 team around there. I don't think that with this roster they'll return to what I kind of qualified them as the guardians of the top 5 almost. To be in the top 5 teams, you had to beat outsiders consistently. I don't think that they're necessarily that anymore, but maybe they're now the guardian of the top 10. They're a team that you have to consistently beat to be a top 10 team.
Funnily enough,
so they're downgraded by 5 slots, but they're still good.
Yeah.
It's funny
they're great, but not elite for me.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
The top 5 Guardian has almost been passed on to Liquid, which is funny, obviously, because Ykinder is now on that roster. So it's just an interesting. I would say if you can beat this new look Liquid consistently, you might actually be a top 5 team. So it's funny that Ykinder is sort of the passing of the torch there as they scale up.
That's true. That's true, actually. Ykinder has been the constant in being a top 5 placeholder guy. Yeah, Guardian. Yeah, yes. Gatekeeper.
It was weird because that old VP lineup before they were called outsiders really did remind me a lot of I mean, I wouldn't say this in a derogatory manner, but fans will probably think it is that I thought of them as a placeholder team in that I didn't really know if they could become the challenger of literally taking tournaments at a tier 1 level. Obviously they did sort of with Flashpoint 2, if I remember correctly, but it was there's some asterisks there. It wasn't the whole field, and it was online. So it's just one of those things where it's you can kind of split hairs. But for me, it's I never really felt like they came into their own. I don't know that this is the lineup to change my mind on that either, because I do think that the caliber of players is less overall. But to your point, Mauisnake, about Jame being a good IGL, I think it's similar to the whole Fallen angle, where it's you might think that his play, the people who think that he's a really great player, those people are overrating him. But then that sort of creates this counter narrative where it's and he's also a shit IGL. Okay, you might be going a little bit too far with that angle too. So it's one of those things where you have to think about, okay, where does he slot in as 2 distinct aspects of the roles? Because he's IGLing and he's offing and he's saving, of course. Top 3 saver of all time. So there you go.
Do you see Liquid winning titles though?
Ooh, yeah, let's get into it. I think they can make top 4 now, top 2.
I think they're in the exact same position VP was in before, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think they...
Not quite a title winner, but one that will be a contender in the top 4 consistently.
That's an interesting prediction. Do they win a single tournament between now and the next year? Or maybe now and the next roster, the next calendar year.
International title, specifically.
Yeah, tier 1 title.
Oh, well, okay. How about I slightly change this to, I'll just say I think the teams that are going to hit elite status are going to be NaVi, FaZe, G2, Vitality, and then Liquid is right there on the cusp for me.
Yeah,
they are right. I'm not sure yet if they are elite or if they're just very, very good. They are the 5th best team for me right now.
Are they are they elite, or are they the guard for who's going to become elite?
Yeah,
It's kind of how I see them, right? They're between there, and that's kind of what I'm waiting to see.
But the thing is, I actually think they can beat some of these teams that are elite. I don't think I would count them out of a series. I would count them out versus a good NaVi, and I would count them out, I guess, versus a good FaZe. But I think they could hang with Vitality and G2 right now. I wouldn't really bet against them too much against them. I guess I would.
They're underdogs, but not heavy.
Yeah. That's exactly.
They have
very
a
close
chance.
Underdogs. Yeah, for sure. That's how I would definitely put it right now. I think they are right almost there. So.
Well, we are the NA Copium podcast, Maui, so we have to say that Liquid is just carrying the torch. But if you really do honestly look at the lineup, AleksiB, NAF, and Ykinder, it's obviously OC is no slouch on the op. Come on, guys, come on. They got experience. They got
their trio is so good.
Yeah, really good
trio
rifles.
Is insane. Yeah.
So it's hard to count them out. Even though people have obviously been down on NA, and I would say rightfully so, you can't really count out this roster. This roster is the greats of the region, basically, plus Ykinder.
If you go man to man versus FaZe, for example, I think very obviously you're gonna have Ykinder over Rain. You're gonna have like Twist versus AleksiB. AleksiB probably takes that slightly.
Yeah.
You have I think Nitro versus Kerrigan. Obviously, Kerrigan takes it.
Yeah.
I think NAF is actually pretty, just like maybe a hair beneath ROPS.
Slightly beneath ROPS.
Yeah, like a hair.
I would almost consider them like 50-50 to be honest. I don't know
like
if I even feel
impact.
comfortable saying like a hair beneath.
I think they're like equal, actually.
Yeah,
I want to say they're equal.
I think I'm just a NAF fan, so it's really hard for me to be like he's worse than ROPS. But
I think ROPS is always going to do better.
50-50.
Well, ROPS will always do better statistically, but in terms of impact, I actually think NAF does more sometimes. Like, but I think Brokey beats OC pretty handily right now. Like
in current form, yeah.
Yeah, I think Brokey's definitely better. Kerrigan's better than Nitro just as a caller too. That's kind of a big deal here. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the biggest difference maker in that matchup specifically for me.
Yeah, and it's also more than just man for man, obviously. But like the experiment is there for us to like rate the players on a player versus player basis. And it is one of those things where it's like if everybody's feeling it and they're in that sort of like grand slam type vibe for Liquid, then they certainly could contend with pretty much anybody. But I do think that like, you know, the FaZe and NaVi's, they're just so well drilled at this point, and they're so like FaZe is so clutch too. I know this has been said to death, but it's just one of those cases where even if Liquid are up on Liquid kind of need to be up on motivation and momentum for me, even now, even with the Kinder edition. And it's like, they still need that momentum to carry forward. They can't get it to 16-11 because then they just drop, or 15-11 rather, they just drop it.
Yeah.
They need like a 15-7 and then they're still comfy. But like FaZe, meanwhile, can do any scoreline seemingly at the big games.
Yeah, and then they can just bring it back. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to get into this topic because it set my like mentions on fire, and I wanted your guys' opinion on it. There was a Reddit thread. Richard Lewis released a video about it. And I'm talking about the conflict of interest at Fragadelphia. We don't usually get into too many like meta discussions like this on this, but I have pretty strong thoughts on this now. And I actually wrote like almost 1,000 words that I pretty much could be like publishing this probably about like why I actually don't think. I'll put it like this. And for anybody that's maybe tuning in and doesn't know the whole situation, I'll give you a bigger rundown here. So basically, Evil Geniuses enrolled two different teams. The Carpe Diem and the Party Astronauts teams at Fragadelphia, which is a grassroots, but has grown out of being a grassroots tournament in North America to actually basically attract international attention. You had like teams like Apex, Big Omen Academy joined it. I think like a British team joined it. So what is out there is that, and people had a serious concern with this, that this is a conflict of interest because if they play each other at this tournament, EG versus EG, actually also there was Davenport University A squad, B squad or whatever. But like, again, I didn't really mind. I don't really, whatever. There's a conflict of interest there. Like, I know what the definition of conflict of interest is. Like, I don't really need to be told that anymore. This is a conflict of interest. What my point is throughout all of this is that not all conflicts of interest are created equally, and is not a binary saying that something is immediately bad when there is a conflict of interest. If that were the case, you wouldn't see it in any cases across any esports or sports, which it does happen in too. And that basically the main thing here is that people just want to slap on the term conflict of interest and then think the discussion is over. It's not. It hasn't. It's like, it's a gray area, which is why a TO like Fragadelphia would allow something like this. This is why this has happened in like COD League or LCS. It's happened in so many different things. Yes, these are conflicts of interest. But instantly saying that does not mean that something is just completely off the table and or illegal. It's not like really illegal. It's just that things that have to be governed between like basically local bodies in order to make sure that that conflict of interest isn't actually going so far in one direction that it is likely leading to malpractice. So I want to hear what you guys thought about this first. I have many more points on this, but like, what are your guys like gut reactions, or what have you guys thought about in terms of this sort of ordeal?
I don't think it should happen. I don't really care if what the potential fallout is, but if you try to take a more realistic approach, you said earlier it does happen. Obviously, there are bigger issues with CS. The question is, when do we decide it's worth enforcing competitive integrity? And it is a question of competitive integrity because it is a conflict of interest. And I wouldn't say that I think anybody on the EG roster would necessarily condone the negative behavior that could happen that could threaten the competitive integrity. It's just, of course, the definition being, if it could happen, then it shouldn't be allowed. And that's more the question, is like, what precedent does this set? It's always hard for people to dissociate like who they're a fan of, what they like, which team they're rooting for. Yeah. And if it's happening to a team that they really like, I mean, I'm friends with Munster, who's in the chat right now. Like, I feel I would consider him a friend at the very least. I would say, like, you know, I've talked with him, we've been on shows, we collaborated. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm going to co-sign any sort of behavior that involves him, obviously. So the question becomes, like, if you separate that out, if you take away the NA side or the individual team side or the people who are involved side, just consider if it was just Team A versus Team B and they were both owned by the same org and they're both paid salaries by the same org, and one of them maybe is slightly edged out the other, or it's even potentially a competition to see in some weird meta way which team should be getting more resources, perhaps. There's all sorts of different angles you could go with. If that were to be happening and they were both sent to the same tournament, like, that is in very clear, in my estimation, a very clear example of a conflict of interest where maybe they meet in the same bracket, which, by the way, would have actually happened at this event had the playoffs gone a bit differently, right?
This Carpe Diem team lost a match.
Yep. Yeah. And if they hadn't, then they would have been competing against each other, which would have been a realization of the exact issue we were concerned about. But it could have also been the same deal. Like, I mean, this didn't happen as far as I know. I'm not alleging that it happened. It very well could have been that Carpe Diem took the L to allow for the next team to go in because they were more favorably matched up against PA, who were going to be I don't know. Like, there's so many different things you could think of. And again, I don't think it happened. I'm not going to say that, sit here and think that maybe it did, or say that maybe it did. It's just a question of, like, this could theoretically occur. And I mean, if you want to get technical, it did happen. As far as I can't say legally it did. In a video game, it happened at the highest level of competition in the LCK. Which is obviously League of Legends for Korea.
Yeah, LCK. Yeah, they played at Worlds, right?
Like, it was the team who won Worlds in a video game had their sister team take the L. So that did happen in a video game. So, like, this thing can happen. Like,
he's saying in a video game.
Yeah, because it's not. Listen, dude, it's all legal shit. As far it's not been confirmed, basically, but it has been confirmed. But it's not. You know what I mean? So allegedly. I think that happened. So it's just one of those things. Like, it's this stuff that keeps occurring. It's like, how far up does it go? How far up can it go? I just would prefer to not have to think about that and just watch the game. And that's the main concern that I have here, is, like, obviously this was tried in the past with Astralis' parent organization, when Astralis and Heroic were owned by the same team. And then it's like, oh, what if they make a league and they own all the teams in the league? Well, like, who knows what fuckery could happen? And those are much less scrupulous individuals than the people running EG, as far as I'm concerned. So I would have even less trust in that. And so I think it's actually a great opportunity to talk about this topic overall, right? I think it's a great opportunity to say, like, okay, well, there's these teams that we generally feel pretty good about. There's these people who are, you know, well respected in the space or whatever, and we don't necessarily think of them as, like, bad actors in any way. But it could happen if they were less scrupulous, if it was a different organization, a different setting. You know, who knows what could happen. So I think it's a great time to talk about it in that sense, because we can maybe move past the idea that we're attacking the individuals and just think about, like, the premise.
I wouldn't be attacking individuals, especially on the EG team, for this, because one, the org has, okay, so I think, like, there are two main kind of offending parties, even though I don't think there is a significant offense here, are Fragadelphia's admin staff that okayed this, and I think the second is EG for enrolling two teams that played in it. And, like, if you're the players on the team, you're probably not going to say, no, I don't want to have a chance to play in this tournament that you're paying for me to go to. Like, it just as, in fact, it would probably work against their contract to not go to it if the org said, hey, play in this tournament. So, like, I can't put that blame on the players at all, actually. I assume they would be working out of, like, against their contract, whatever. So where I find, like, people have come up with hypotheticals that there would be some sort of, like, competitive integrity issue here is, like, what would EG rig this for? So what are the, like, so then I broke down what are the ways that they're going to break, like, I'll just say the three things that they would probably be doing here if they wanted to, like, if there were malpractice or foul play, would be, one, match fixing. That's just, like, the first most and obvious one. Let's just think about that for, like, a split second here. If you match fix in the CSGO space in any facet, you are banned. You are out of your whole org is going to dissolve probably because everybody will know you're a match fixers. Like nobody's going to represent you or want to be part of you.
And about 15 years when ESIC actually prosecutes you.
How about never? How about the entire tier 2 scene has been doing this for the past 5 years, homie? Like I don't know if you can say that with any degree of confidence. In a perfect world, yes.
But okay, so this is actually where I even was like going to go further than that with the match fixing thing is that, you know, what's easier to do is match fix if you just aren't under the same banner. So what's to say that 2 teams that are just signed up for Fragadelphia are not doing it? It's just the information that we have that basically we're almost burdened with this knowledge now that EG is running both of these teams, when in fact most match fixing cases, I'm sure in the tier 2 NA space, we're not under the same banner in terms of the org that was running them. It's just that there is now like a person that's higher above them and a banner that they're waving that is saying like, we do actually have relations to each other. But we know now that like most people like 4Pack and Retchy just had relations to their friends. Like they were just match fixing without that sort of banner. So it was like, I actually almost have started moving away from the match fixing side of it even further, because I realized that most match fixing isn't like, it's not that obvious when it's just between 2 teams of the same org. It happens more often when it's not 2 teams of the same org. It happens more for a tier 2 team that isn't contracted at all, because they know that there's more on the line here, where they have their contracts that will be voided. They know they're pro players. They're gonna like lose their jobs forever if they do that. So that to me is like such a huge like indictment on the likelihood that it's going to be match fixing. Like that just makes so little sense for that to even be a possibility. And like also, it's also kind of like an external betting thing that like it should also be probably like more so on the bookie side of things, where it's like the bookies should just straight up like not have that game available for bet, you know, like, and if EG finds some like secret backdoor bookie, shady bookie that is like willing to take the bet, then the bookie is just a dumbass. Then the bookie is just a moron, because why would you let an EG like head of staff bet with you when you know that he's like possibly the one that's causing any kind of fix? So I don't think that makes any sense. I literally don't understand how match fixing could even be like a remote idea in this case anymore. Like I don't think anybody, if you guys could prove the otherwise, like how could this be?
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. So it might, again, I mean, I sort of talked about it earlier, where it's like, oh, this team doesn't do very well against PA side, so we'll on the CD side, you know, just take the L here. Just don't try as hard, man. And that's the thing is like, you can't just not allow betting on the match to match up with these 2 teams. It has to be the whole event off, no betting. And I mean, that's a pretty big hit to any event if you don't know. So that's something that would basically mean that nobody would even invite this team, or it wouldn't be financially, you know, ideal at all for anybody to invite this team. So that's like one of those cases where it's kind of like a nuclear option, right? It's like, if you are going to have this, then there can't be betting. And that doesn't even really fully fix the problem, because it could still happen just for the prize money, just for the clout of winning and the sponsorship exposure and all that other stuff. So, I mean, who knows? Like, another example, if you want to go the sponsorship route, it could be completely irrelevant. If you have like if say MIBR has 2 teams fielding, but one of them has Fallen, you know, it's like, okay, well, the Fallen team's going to get a lot more eyeballs, a lot more sponsorship activation. Hey, other team, you know, take the L. I'm not saying it would happen. I'm not saying it's even likely or possible. I am saying it's possible. That's the main problem, is that it's certainly, you could imagine a scenario where it could happen. And it doesn't even take that like a super creative person to think about like, well, how could I maybe squeeze a little bit more blood from the stone, and despite any potential shady morals. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that like again, that's like the least likely option, I think. Like you're correct in saying that it's like, that would happen. But also remember that it doesn't even take 2 teams to collude. It could be one person on one team doing one thing with another person on another team, or simply say it's the IGL or the star player. Maybe they call deliberately terribly. Maybe
the risk of someone colluding is always there. It's always present,
yeah.
Regardless of if they're under the same org or not.
Right.
Which is also my like counterpoint to that. Well, what, like, how are you enforcing that? How do you know, like?
Oh yeah, you can't. It's an unprovable thing. But what I'm saying is, it would only,
regardless of if they're the same org or 2 different orgs.
It would only take one person on one of the teams to be told by the org or something like that. In a theoretical world, is what I'm saying. And that's the main issue. Is that a lot of this stuff is just in theory. A lot of this stuff is like existing in our minds as we project out potential scenarios, not necessarily something that we can point, even if it did happen, like maybe it did happen at this event, right? But like we can't know. We'll never be able to know, really. So that's the tough part.
I'm really conflicted as to how to feel about this specific situation, because in one regard, I think even having the option to have a conflict of interest there is something that shouldn't exist. I think that the fact that you have teams under one organization that now have multiple chances of winning the same event, which shouldn't be a thing, for one. For two, you have a chance of those teams meeting each other in the event, which, regardless of whether they would fix the outcome or not, that just shouldn't exist. Like, you shouldn't have the possibility of having two teams under the same organization meet in an event. And the fact that the thought can even exist that maybe this team will tell one of their teams to win it and the other one to not. Like, yes, I don't think either of these actual teams would do that, and I don't think any of the organizations would do that either. But the fact is that the potential for that to even happen shouldn't exist. Now, to counter myself, I think Fragadelphia as an event should not be held to the same expectation as an ESL Pro League, a Blast, like any of these top tier events that are running as such. I think Fragadelphia in North America has always held this less, I don't want to say less professional, but it's always held this like amateur path to like, it's the LAN you go to when you're on the come up in NA to kind of like prove you can do it on LAN. It's also the one where you meet pros and meet like players of your similar level that are in Premier or in Advanced, and you kind of like, that's how you make your way up.
Yeah, it's like making relations in that space, yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, the fact that these two EG teams, or these two teams, like Party Astronauts and Carpe Diem, signed to EG, I think when they did that, this is part of one of the sacrifices they made, in that only one of those teams can then go to Fragadelphia. Just like only one of those teams can compete in the major qualifier. Just like only one of those teams can be an ESL Pro League. It's just one of the sacrifices you make when you decide that you're getting that salary and you're getting that guaranteed ability to play under an org like EG. That's the trade-off you're making. That you get to play in some tournaments, another EG team gets to play in other tournaments, and the other EG team gets to play in other tournaments. That's kind of just how it is. But unfortunately, EG decided, hey, we're going to have all the teams instead of just our main team and a academy or a secondary team. They're like, no, we're going to have 3 teams instead, and 2 of the teams play on the same level because North America is in such a shit situation that you only really seem to have one org that wants to like help alleviate that and help actually try and promote that structure. So it sucks all around, because I think both teams should be able to compete in Fragadelphia and have the chance to make a name for themselves and get those results. But the fact is that they're both underneath the same organization, and I'm sorry, but the reality of accepting an offer under that organization is that you can only play in one of those teams can only play in that tournament. That's just how it is. It's just like they made the decision. Like, that's why Valve has their rule that only one team from an organization can play in a major qualifier. They don't want the potential. They don't, like, no one's thinking that, oh, like, Carpe Diem's not going to allow, or is going to, like, allow Party Astronauts to win in a major qualifier. It's that shouldn't even be a potential. Like, the fact is, it's not about how much credence you give to the players, how much you give to the teams. It's like, yes, we know them. We know that they wouldn't do it. The potential should never be there. And the fact that the team signed to this organization and they knew that this would be an outcome, they accepted that.
Yeah, there was even an interview where Munster said, like, he had to talk with the whole team and say, like, all right, do we as Party Astronauts want to do this when we were basically not allowed to compete at majors until, like, things change or maybe we get picked up by a different org? And they all agreed to do that. And, I mean, the same thing should be true there. It's like, I don't know how you decide which team goes in. Do you do some sort of like duel off, blood sports scrims or something? Yeah, that could be could be an angle, but like figure out who goes. But
I forgot, that's another point that I meant to say, is that Carpe Diem and Party Astronauts have been practicing each other in the EG Seattle headquarters continuously over the last few months, and probably the main team. I don't know what the exact like situation with that is, but they have a far more intuitive understanding of like how the other team plays. So if you're then matching up against each other in a tournament, it's not going to be the same match. Like it's just not the same situation, and that's not fair to the rest of the tournament.
Okay. I accept that. I accept strongly that these teams should not be any sort of qualifier with each other. I wrote that down like in my giant list of reasons as to why I believe what I believe in this, because qualifiers can be like much more easily manipulated because there's like the placing objectives in a qualifier are very different than a cash tournament. Like a cash tournament only rewards for like the org here only rewards higher placings, whereas there's ways in a qualifier where, for instance, like top 6 slots, there's a lot of bracket manipulation that can go on in order to like reach qualification status. And so like I also think that you shouldn't have two teams that are of the same banner doing it, but it's like the reason like I have this exception, a greater exception with Fragadelphia, is because of kind of like the MO of Frag entirely is so drastically different than like a Proleague, or like there's not these external benefits. Whereas even for like well, RMR is the most obvious one where you just like you qualify, you get stickers, boom, huge amount of money right there. And even like Proleague has like stuff too where it's like they have like other little monetary things where it's like if you win a match, you get 5,000 extra dollars. If you get like I think for one like ESL ranking and stuff like that, and that's kind of like took me to a point where I was also kind of curious like how does Fragadelphia, how is that included in HLTV World Rankings? Because basically my argument kind of unravels at this point more so where basically I think there could be a conflict of interest in terms of like propping up another team's HLTV rating because this is a LAN official match, and that's where I feel like the throwing in terms of like moving like if Fragadelphia's only goal were just prize money, then I think that I actually almost have I can't even really think of a great reason as to why I can't have both these teams here, because at the end of the day, if they're just paying a lot of money to try to get further in the tournament, they're investing money to try to make money. Like it's just like from like an economic standpoint, I feel like that's just how everything works. Period in the world. Like you're just putting money in to try to get more money out of it. Like I don't that to me is just like business. But when it's like qualification or there's like ranking points on the line, then throwing to try to prop up the ranking of say like the Party Astronauts roster because you want this team to start getting invited to stuff. This is where my argument gets a little bit flimsy, because I could totally see that where EG's like, CD, you guys have a lower world ranking, or vice versa, you guys have a low ranking. We want you to take some of the points from Party Astronauts. We want you to win this match so you guys are both top 60 teams in the world, so we can like market that and be like, hey, we have 3 teams that are all in the top 60 of the world. So this is me kind of like going against it a little bit, but it's again a small point. And in the gray area of all of this, I find like it's such a lower priority than like letting the teams play, because like you said, no, the objective of this is to just have like tier 2 level teams have an environment where they can like play in this kind of thing. I think it does greater good in that sense, which is kind of like a utilitarian way to see all this. Like what's the greatest good here throughout all of this? Like trolley problem here. Like, do I kill EG, or do I like just, it's like, do I kill one team or do I kill the integrity of the event? I guess that's like what the lever is shifting the tracks towards. But
I mean, go back to what you were saying about Endpoint before, though, in the sense that like, maybe they're prioritizing a certain player so that they can sell them for more. Maybe they're prioritizing a certain team so that they can sell them for more, or prioritizing like, who's to say that they let like, I don't know, for example, like maybe they're like, Ponalone's getting really old, let's let him get like a 2.0 rating against CD. Like it's just like it's obviously that's a joke example, but like in the sense that like there shouldn't even be potential for that. Like on one degree, yes, I think that it's very beneficial to have both teams play, and I think that all the players on the teams should have the opportunity to compete in something like Fragadelphia. It just shouldn't be a reality. Like part of as I said, I don't think there's any counter to the argument in that when these players signed to play under this organization, part of that agreement was that you will not be able to play in certain tournaments because the other team will be playing in other tournaments.
Right.
That's kind of the deal. Like that's kind of where it is. And because Fragadelphia is like one of the biggest lands in NA, both of the teams want to play, obviously. But then,
well, I would assume that sort of contract thing came more down to if the tournament doesn't allow both of you guys to play in it, we will be selecting the team that goes to that thing.
But why does the tournament not allow both teams to play? Because it's a conflict of interest.
So this is more down to like Fragadelphia's admins than like anything to do with, like, again, like I said at the very beginning of this, I don't blame EG's players for this at all.
Neither do I.
I would like shoot this more up to like Fragadelphia's admin team that let this happen, and I'm trying to explain why it's a gray area, not a black and white issue. So
I just think Fragadelphia's admins made a poor decision in this sense. Like, I think they prioritized having more names at their event, which I don't think is bad for them. But the fact is that they shouldn't even allow that conflict of interest to occur in their event, because they're also then having to select the bracket in a way that both EG teams can't meet in the grand final, and they have to meet beforehand, for example. Like, I think it would be really bad, for example, if both EG teams had the potential, or were on either side of the bracket, and the only way they could have met was in the grand final. Like, nobody wants to see EGCD versus EGPA in the grand final. I'm sorry, not because of the players or anything, just for the sake of competitive integrity. Like, that just wouldn't make for a good event, for one. For two, like, I think...
so that statement right there, though, that it wouldn't make it a good event, that's where Fragadelphia deemed it's still an okay event. We're the ones running it. Like, we can do that. We have the power here. So, like, that's their option. That's their choice. And I think
Fragadelphia aren't like a 30K LAN anymore, my dude. They're $100,000, and they're running like qualifier events in cooperation with ESEA, where like you play in weekend cash cups and you like get points to qualify for the LAN, and you like get invited to the main stage, and then you have European teams flying in like Apex. And then you have this competitive level rising, but you can't simultaneously be like, oh, we're still a small LAN, we're going to allow this like conflict of interest. Like, it doesn't work. You can't have both. You can't be like a small tier LAN, but then also like try and balance it out by saying like, no, we're going to make this weird decision that like other LANs wouldn't allow. It's just, you can't do that. Like, to one degree, I get it. You're trying to prop up NA and you're trying to allow for these teams to play, and it is very much like a legacy LAN in NA, and there is an importance to having that like path up to pro, especially with how much NA is struggling. Like, I get all of the situations that are for it, but it just shouldn't happen.
In terms of
that's the end of it.
In terms of like the ethics in like when we look at this specific situation, it's a subjective judgment that the conflict of interest impedes like the event's quality. Like, it's kind of like, that's not, and the way that Fragadelphia deemed it, they don't think it impedes like the event. Like, they think it makes a better event. Probably they think it probably gets more views or something like that, which is not how I think you should be running an event, or like you should sacrifice competitive integrity to do that. But when your and many arguments boil down to it makes the event bad because no one wants to watch it, that's still using the same metric. That's still using the same metric in just the other direction. Like, it's like a counter logical kind of statement to say that, because they think it's good. They think it's good for viewership. They think it I think this is bad because I'll say this, like, I basically have like a negative opinion of the whole incident. And I know it's a conflict of interest. I just think that like it's up to Fragadelphia sometimes what they want to do in this kind of situation. And I don't think like, because it's not some world-class tournament where we should eliminate all types of conflict of interest. That's why I like I'm fine with the EG players. Like, this is not their fault. I almost am fine with EG, in fact, because they just could do it. They should do it. They should just get more exposure for it. And then with Fragadelphia, they just are looking for their bottom line in this too. They think that this is going to provide more viewership because you get another big org that's putting players in your tournament. Like, this is not supposed to take place on the world's highest stage. But if Fragadelphia just want that little jump in viewership, this is at their end of the day. This is their choice, and this is the choice they made. And I think like that's why I'm just like not just sold on it being
I don't think having two EG teams affected the viewership though. Like, I don't think if they had one EG team there, it would have lowered the viewership versus having both teams there.
Well, don't bury the lead either, because this isn't about viewership at the end of the day. I mean, we were talking about viewership as an angle for maybe why the subjective decision was made, but it is an objective conflict of interest, regardless of what goes down and doesn't go down. And that's the main thing that you have to look at. And I'm sorry, but I think it was I do think it's disgraceful if a team has two orgs. I think there's something perverse about a single organization getting double checks written to them from prize money. I think that is already too far, and that's not respecting the players at all. It has nothing to do with the players. That's the org getting double payouts from this TO, and it's not much. It's 40,000 for first place, 5,000 for where CD slotted. It's not a crazy amount, but it's not about the amount. Just like it's not about the viewership. It's about what is objectively happening, which is two separate checks. And I think also that's something that's pretty messed up.
Keep in mind, 2 spots to EG at Fragadelphia means 1 less spot to another team at Fragadelphia. It's not as simple as...
Yeah, if you're talking about the greater good, there's an element there where it's like, okay, well, these two teams are owned by the same organization, run by the same organization, but that means that there's another organization, or maybe just a BYOC type team that's just showing up. Like, I don't know. I think gone are the days where this is just like, I think even if it were a little LAN with 30K or whatever, I still wouldn't be super comfortable with it at all, and I would still call it out as a conflict of interest. But I also think that if the players of these teams wanted to quickly make a mix and go in without the EG banner, maybe that makes more sense. I mean, it's still a little bit suspicious because they're technically being paid salaries from an org, but at least there's a degree of separation there and it's a bit different. But they were both repping EG, and the checks did go to them first, and I think that's messed up. I don't think that should happen in CS, and I think that if you allow this kind of... I mean, I like to think about it like this, too, whenever I'm trying to weigh up a principled issue, is what happens if every team is able to do this now at every LAN? Or even every LAN that's like the size of Fragadelphia? What if the next Fragadelphia has 12 teams, but each one of them are both owned by 2 orgs? I mean, it can't happen because there's not that many teams.
I'm not taking it to the nth degree, because the nth degree changes the set of circumstances. Like, there's nuance to this whole discussion, and I think a lot of times when I've seen this kind of post online,
who draws that line?
The line is drawn
but you can't be like, okay, let's say NaVi decides next.
There could just be a rule that just says you can only have 2 teams. Like that could be the line right there. That's
not a good line.
That just ends the discussion.
That's worse. Like, that's worse though.
I wouldn't say that's like...
You don't want 2 teams from each org attending a LAN. Like, that doesn't make sense. That makes it even worse. Like, having a rule being like, no, all org can only have a max of 2 teams makes competitive integrity worse, because now you have orgs able to send 2 teams in the rules. Alex, you're making your point worse.
No, like, okay, I'm saying, like, you're not gonna have like 9 teams from it because they would just say no. Like, that's all it takes. Like, I think taking like it to like the greatest possible like bad is not where this discussion needs to go, because it's like there's no need for a hypothetical there. It's just like, what happened here. That's what I'm saying, is like, I don't need the precedent is the very next event could be different, because if they have 150,000, maybe the line could be just drawn at the prize money or something like that. Like, or like, basically the line for me is drawn like how big the tournament is actually, because at the end of the day, the reason the reason I started this point is that Fragadelphia is essentially just a grassroots LAN, like, and it's supposed to just like get people in North America to play with each other, and there's a weird circumstance right now in the NA space where one org has 3 teams, and I feel like this is just some weirdly unique set of circumstances that I'm not necessarily like drawing the line and being like, we need to uphold we need to like bury this conflict of interest in the ground, because we all know that this space has like such a weird landscape right now that like burying a team is not necessarily good for the scene either. So that's why I'm like...
So this goes back to my original point, in like the 2 main conflicts in this situation. Like, again, to reiterate, the players are not the issue in this at all. The primary issue is, 1, Fragadelphia allowing it to happen, because they made that choice to allow the 2 teams from the same org to compete, both for Davenport and for EG.
Okay, this might be frustrating for everybody, but if I were the Fragadelphia admins, I wouldn't have let this happen. But I've been arguing this whole time to try to explain how this is a much grayer area than people are just drawing the line out immediately. Okay, like,
yes. If I was the Frag admins, I wouldn't have allowed it to happen either.
Okay.
I can understand the decision-making process for them at least. Because also keep in mind, like, all of these players have also played multiple Fragadelphias before, like, or the majority of them have. And the admins are also like well aware that they compete for the win. They're not like whatever, like they have an understanding of like the players aren't going to be fixing the matches, etc.
I mean, I can understand the motivation behind a match fixer too, but that doesn't mean I think that it's a gray area to match fix, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is because you have to figure out the principle before you assess the individual situation. You guys can think about this yourselves and figure it out, but I feel like we would be having a very immediately closed case, one-sided conversation if this exact thing happened in a Russia-only CIS event somewhere, and it was just Tier 2 Russia, but actually it has like, I don't know, Spirit and Spirit Academy are playing against each other. I don't think we would even think about it, man. I honestly think it would be open and shut. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe we would still be doing that.
That's why I revealed my side of it this late, because I want to explore the issue. I didn't necessarily I'm not necessarily convinced. I don't know. I actually think. Well, if you want to say more, go for it. I'm all ears.
I was just going to say my second point to that is that I think I place the blame more squarely on Evil Genius as an organization than anything in allowing this to even become an issue. I think that both of the teams would never say no to playing in a Fragadelphia.
Yeah.
And by signing both organizations, yes, hold on, I get it. Signing both of these teams is a net benefit to NA in the sense that there's no organizational support for a lot of these kind of rosters. And I think these players having that structure and having that kind of ability to play off of EG as an org is a benefit to both them and NA as a whole. But that being said, them playing in this tournament was one of the sacrifices you make when you sign on to play
to
as
have the support from that organization.
Yes, in the sense that one of the teams is going to play and the other one isn't. That's a decision that EG should have made. It shouldn't have been, no, you guys can both go, we'll talk to the tournament organizers, try and make it work out. It should just be, okay, maybe they host an internal BO3 and be like, whoever wins this BO3 gets to go to Frag.
Why not? Yeah.
Maybe that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just what they had to do. But I'm the fact that it opens up this can of worms in the first place is the main issue.
Yeah, put that on the main Evil Geniuses Twitch channel. Stream that. See how that there you go. There's competition just to figure out who goes, right? And that could be that could be a neat little play to do. And it's just it's internal. That's buffs up their numbers, gives them more sponsorship activation. It would be good content, I think. That's a much better and a more whole-some solution to this than sending both teams. I think Frag, you still have to say. Go ahead.
That would be a really cool way to do it, actually. That would be a very beneficial for the whole community to see that, actually.
Sure, yeah. I mean, then they can bring up their own, the diehard fans of those rosters and of NACS in general. We can assess who they think the better team is. Based on that, they can, there can be this shoulder content. That can be a positive thing to come from EG picking up all the teams, besides the fact that, of course, they all get salaries and all that support stuff and stuff. I'll just say about Frag, I don't think they should have allowed it, obviously. But I also think that, I don't know, when you're put the lean on by EG, which we assume happened. Maybe it didn't. Maybe there was just here's a proposal. And then by virtue of the name being big enough, Frag decided to sort of allow that. I don't know. If I'm the other teams at this event, I'm staging a coup immediately and saying, we're not playing. We qualify, but we're not playing if you're going to allow two teams. And I feel like the fact that didn't happen is unfortunate, because that would have short-circuited the whole thing immediately, right? If this happens and I'm a competitor at an event and I see, a rival org or just an org that happens to be fielding multiple teams, having both of their representatives here or whatever, it's nah, homie. Nah, I don't think so. So just based on that pretense alone, I don't think you can lay the blame necessarily or nearly as much responsibility on the other players. But I do think you should stand up for what you think is right or wrong as far as competitive integrity goes. And where was Shock saying something like this on Apex? Where were any of the bigger names that were at this event that weren't on an EG roster saying, "Hey,
Sicko
we're not going to allow
literally
that"?
Head of the CSPPA, by the way.
Yeah, hello. We should probably hold them to a bit of a standard here too, and say, "Hey guys, you facilitated this by your compliance." You know what I mean? And that's the thing that I've had a problem with every single time the CSPPA does or most often doesn't do something, is that you guys have the power. The only power of a union or agency or whatever is withhold the labor and make them come to the table and negotiate details. They didn't even try to do that here as far as I can tell. So whatever.
Okay. I think we are on the same page. I wanted to just explore that because I also thought, whatever. We've explored it. It's been good. It was a good discussion, I think.
Yeah.
I think to wrap up my thoughts at least, I think for Fragadelphia as an event, not the biggest deal, but not something I want to see happen again.
Yeah, that's kind of
like
where.
I think this should be a learning lesson going forward for both EG as an org and Fragadelphia as a tournament organizer.
Right.
Like I understand why they did it, but it just shouldn't even be a discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this feels like something we would see in 2015, but unfortunately, that's maybe where NA still is. I don't know. Get him out.
That's toxic.
Listen, I do realize I said that, and then my instinct was Mix is going to say something to help NA out now, and he's in the chat. Maybe he can still say it.
He just joined the chat.
Mix, what's your shout out?
When they watch the VOD.
I already shouted out, whoever it was, Esatag for you, but who else is your shout out?
He'll give it eventually. We'll get to those. How about we just get to the Patreon question and then we'll do shout outs, because I think this has been a lengthy discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Was okay. So we got. I think we only have one right now, right?
It is on the screen.
This is what happens when we don't remind people to do them. All right, reminder, everybody. Before we do it, reminder that you can submit your questions via Patreon. We have many patrons, and you guys could ask us all these questions, and we get to your questions often enough, I feel like, that you should. But either way, I don't think any of us are complaining about the fact that we had more time to talk about conflicts of interest and competitive integrity. So let's do this. firsoch asks, how was m0NESY's first year thus far compared to ZywOo's? ZywOo.
Had to correct that at the very last second there. I feel like
you just have to throw out the other name.
Yeah,
the
sure.
other pronunciation.
I think m0NESY is looking pretty hot, especially now, but I mean, he's more flashy, but I feel like maybe this is wrong, but my instinct is to say that ZywOo had more competition in terms of like he was showed off more on his first year and he had to play more games. Do you guys agree with that? Or like it feels like ZywOo is more consistent in terms of like the fact that he played more games in his first year at tier 1 than what I feel like m0NESY has done. Obviously the year's not over yet, so that also probably contributes, but that's just my thoughts. Is that like, I mean, m0NESY's looked pretty good, but first of all, not at the level of ZywOo overall consistently across his time at tier 1 so far. And also feels like less of a sample size. So not sure what to think.
I have a pretty strong take on this actually. Okay. That I think ZywOo had a lot more help. Like I think he had a much better team around him than what m0NESY has. I think like I don't think AleksiB. After seeing a couple, like, because we have this new information about how he looks under HooXi, this is a much better team now. He's a much better player now. If he had HooXi this whole year, he could have been maybe as good as ZywOo was in his first year. Actually, like honestly, he's already. I mean, if you just look at these last two events, his rating would literally be like, if you average the two events, he'd be like almost exactly what ZywOo's rating was for what ZywOo had in his 2019 year, which was, by the way, #1 player on HLTV. So these last two events for m0NESY, if he just continued on pace with this, even with the variance in the two events so far, he's the best player in the world. Like, essentially in another year. I think because of that, it's hard for me to like really like. I almost think that in some ways, like m0NESY, just mechanically speaking, looks better. Like,
agreed.
I feel like he might be better, but I just think like his play was a little bit more like one note. But I remember all these games for ZywOo, like no joke. I remember all these games for ZywOo where he was playing like one spot for a whole round for Vitality, and some reason the opponents just all come to him. And then you think about like how the team for Vitality use utility and their bodies to block off space to like funnel the opponents, that is, to ZywOo. And I don't see that with m0NESY at all. Like I don't see the opponents just charging him in the same way where he could pick up these like crazy multi-frags. So like I honestly, what's crazy, I can't believe I'm saying that. Honestly, on eye test, m0NESY might in the last month he's just as good. Like it's crazy. It's crazy how good he's looked. So that's my piece. That's my piece on him.
I think for me, I think what you said was really similar to what I was originally going to say, in the sense that the support structure ZywOo had when he first came up was far superior to what m0NESY had. I think m0NESY originally obviously had Blade coaching him through the whole NaVi junior team, but after that kind of like the second he hit tier 1, that kind of fell away. And ZywOo meanwhile had very experienced people around him to kind of coach him through playing against some of the best teams in the world. Not necessarily coach him through. I think obviously like ZywOo had been playing FPL for a long time, and he had his own individual ability, and he was like a prodigy level player in that sense. But he had the right structure around him to set him up to play very well on top of all of that. Whereas G2 were kind of figuring out who they were, like figuring out their own identity as a team when m0NESY joined. And it seems like they're kind of only now getting a sense of that. And we're seeing that kind of hit home and help m0NESY flourish in that way. I think I can't, like, I think if we're saying the first year, I would definitely say ZywOo's was superior. But I think in terms of how m0NESY's performing right now, there's like, he's outperforming ZywOo in the last month compared to ZywOo's like general form. Like from what we've seen m0NESY with HooXi, he's playing better than ZywOo did in his. It's hard to average a month over a year, obviously, but in terms of level form, m0NESY's got a little bit more output.
Actually, I'll say this though. I think ZywOo in his first year showed me more with rifles. Actually, I think he had almost maybe a more well-rounded game. I also think ZywOo was more clutch in his first year, even though like the clutches from m0NESY are like so like they're so insane that they just get burned into your brain that you think he has like so many. But like I don't like he does win a good amount, but he also like I don't know. Like I felt like ZywOo like the thing is that's kind of weird to me is that I feel like if you just took like ZywOo and like natural player progression and like career trajectory and skill and everything, I almost think ZywOo's first year made it look like, okay, this guy should be a top 3 player in the world for the next 6 years, like 5 or 6 years, because he played very smart too, but also probably looked better because of the system. Whereas m0NESY sometimes like, dude, I don't know if he can keep this up for 3 years. Like this is insane levels of play. So it's kind of like in a longevity standpoint, which I guess no one's really asking, but like I think ZywOo looks like he could just like keep doing this. Like he looks so much cleaner in how he plays the game, and he doesn't have to hit the 10 out of 10 difficulty shots, even though he could very frequently do it. I barely feel like he has to, and he still wins in like really sick 1v3s. It's just that like they're just less flashy because he doesn't need to be flashy.
ZywOo was always an excellent rifler though. Like before he even started opping, he was a rifler. That's the thing. Like as a player, his skill level was always that high, whereas m0NESY kind of became known as an opper first.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think m0NESY's rifling still impressed me. Like, yeah, especially in G2's last series versus FaZe, he was rifling like most of Nuke on their CT side at least, and that was pretty good. I think like I don't think I wouldn't say that his rifling's better than ZywOo's. Like ZywOo's rifling back in his first year is definitely above where m0NESY's at, but I don't think it's like that far of a drop. Like it almost reminds me of how Kenny S used deagles and rifles. Like he was still pretty good with them, if in his prime, obviously not recently.
I'll give one stat. Actually, I just looked it up. So far this year, 2022, 56% of m0NESY's kills are with the op, and in ZywOo's first year, it was 39%. So m0NESY is opping like he has to. It doesn't have to have the op in his hands to succeed, but like ZywOo really showed he does not need the op, and he's still.
Was Navera on the team though during that period?
Actually,
first year he was.
Oh,
right?
I don't know. I don't know if in the no. It wasn't in the first year.
That was year 2.
Epicenter was the last event, and Navera was not on that team.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, that was still Alex was still calling, and it had RPK. So, yeah, it wasn't like sharing op roles or anything like that. Okay, I think that's well. How about this? Let's just give him a flat answer. Better or worse?
I would say worse.
Yeah, worse. Pretty simply worse.
Agreed.
That's like the end of this. Yeah. But it has potential very soon to be better now that they have an almost better system.
Well, when you shade in the context of the support structure and all that stuff, it's almost like m0NESY's not really billed as the super carry that ZywOo was for Vitality. So it's like
Vitality didn't have a Nico on the team.
Not even really a hunter, honestly. So
no, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's do shout outs. Let's do some shout outs here. If Mix has a shout out, type it, Mix. But I think Mix might be.
I think he went to bed.
Yeah, it might be in bed. Who knows?
Yeah.
Okay, Pronogo. Then what is your shout out?
Shout out Hades. He's now on Finest. I said that you were as good as syrsoN, so please prove me correct. That's it.
Okay. Note, what's your shout out?
I would say a shout out the HLTV Celebrity Fantasy League, where I'm gonna catch up to Mauisnake in no time.
Where are you at?
Suffering hardcore. I mean, I almost got 8 points in my first game, but I was top 26 instead of top 25.
Oh yeah, that stuff is annoying, honestly.
That was unlucky, but I'm coming for you because you've played all 3 games, and I'm already at half your points.
I've gotten 4 points on every single one. That's it.
Just saying, I'm on my way.
I'm just Mr. Consistent on these things. I just I didn't even put rolls in like the first week or something like that too. I forgot I didn't even do boosters on like one of the weeks also, or like maybe the first week I didn't do the first week I didn't do boosters, and the second week I didn't do rolls because I just forgot these things. But now I get it. Now I know what to do, so I'm not gonna mess up anymore. I'll get all the points I'm supposed to get. So you say that, but I've learned how to play. I've learned how to play. I've learned how to play. All right.
No boosters. What?
I know, right? Like it's such a foreign concept to me, but now I get it. Okay, so my shout out is let's see, what's my shout out? I guess I could give it to the night shift.
There it is.
Let's give it to the night shift. Let's give it to Paula and blah. Let's do that. So shouts out to the fellow night shifters who are not only keeping these broadcasts fun and fresh, but also pretty much the guys I hang out with like all the time. So that's basically all I got right now. So I have to give them a shout out because I'm trapped.
I can't wait for Sponge's diss track to come out. The rap track that they're working on.
Okay, is that really gonna take place? Are they really gonna diss the night shift?
I think it's already happening.
They need to get Boomich in as a guest artist, obviously.
Oh yeah, sure.
Of course.
That'll be good. Okay. Also shout out to everybody that's gonna be at the NARMR. That's all I'm gonna leave it at. Just put it right there. All right. Peace. I think that's it. I think we're good. Let's show the patrons. Let's show them all.